Chapter 1693. Su Yu remained motionless as he casually waved the Azura sword in his hand. Boundless Demon Sect. A gigantic demon sword tore through the demon world and descended, easily shattering the sword aura that was sweeping over. Whoosh, the heartless Saber Emperor barged in, leaving a trail of fragmentary shadows as he charged toward Su Yu. Trash, you still dare to fight back? The huge saber under his feet whistled as it spun and flew into the emotionless Saber Emperor's palm. The emotionless Saber Monarch held the huge saber in his hand and chopped down. Enough, Empress Ziwei said indifferently. Her tone was as cold as the Ice Empress. Strangely enough, the heartless Saber Monarch, who was so unruly, immediately stopped after hearing Empress Ziwei's words. The arrogance in his eyes toward Empress Ziwei was replaced by a hint of respect. It was this person who provoked me first, Empress Ziwei said indifferently. No matter who provoked who first, since you're here, don't act rashly. Hearing this, the heartless Saber Emperor cast his gaze towards the stone statue that had its back facing them. A look of reverence appeared on his face. Faceless stone Buddha. Su Yu stared at the stone statue curiously. On his other side was Huangfu Liang. He laughed and said, "Ancient dream altar, a dream that transcends the ages. Rumor has it that the altar was left behind by a Buddhist Taoist master. He faced the world with his back, and no living being had ever seen his front. Of course, there are also rumors that this Buddhist Taoist lord was born without a front, only a back. Therefore, he was given the name Faceless Buddha. It means that he has no front and his back is to the world." Su Yu looked at Huangfu Liang gratefully. Huangfu Liang was actually explaining to Su Yu. Before the Faceless Buddha passed away, he used all his Buddhist energy to build the altar. Supposedly, this altar was forged from his body, the numerous talismans were formed from his meridians, his bones formed a limestone path, the vitality within his body formed numerous living beings, and his essence and Tao heart formed the stone statue before us. Even though the others already knew about it, they still listened to Huangfu Liang's words with great interest. Su Yu was deeply shocked. This altar was forged from the body of that Tao Lord? If Su Yu had not experienced the Bluestone Road, he would have found it hard to believe. However, on the Bluestone Path, after experiencing 100 years of dull comprehension, Su Yu could not help but believe most of this legend. The emotionless Saber Monarch said, "The Faceless Buddha is indeed extraordinary. Up until now, none of those who stepped on that Bluestone Path have returned alive, right?" Huangfu Liang nodded his head slowly. The spinal cord of the Faceless Buddha contains part of the essence of his cultivation. It is not something that an ordinary person can withstand. Since the ancient dream altar began, no living creature has successfully returned alive. Empress Ziwei and Blood Guanin's expressions shifted upon hearing this. They already knew about the existence of the Bluestone Path, but they didn't have the courage to try. The merciless Blade King said regretfully, "I heard that if one could successfully endure 100 years of cultivation, he or she would be able to share part of the inspiration of the Faceless Buddha. That is a great opportunity that can only be found by chance. Unfortunately, it is not left for us. Unless one has the cultivation of the divine warrior of heaven and earth, who could endure 100 years of cultivation." The divine warrior of heaven and earth? Su Yu smiled faintly and did not think much of it. "What are you laughing at?" The merciless Saber Emperor, who had been paying attention to Su Yu all along, shouted in displeasure when he discovered that Su Yu was laughing weirdly. Su Yu ignored him and remained silent. A cold light flashed in the merciless Saber Emperor's eyes. "Humph! I'll teach you a lesson later." He seemed to be afraid of something and did not dare to attack recklessly. Swoosh, 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 a series of strange sounds fell into everyone's ears. Looking closely, they saw that 5 balls of flame had appeared in the center of the stone statue. The flames split open a circle in the middle, allowing only one person to pass through. Huang Fu Liang and the others were all excited. Empress Ziwei's icy eyes flickered with excitement. Is it finally here? The Path Master's comprehension left behind by the faceless Buddha. As soon as she finished speaking, she had already flown into the circle of fire in front of her. Blood Guanyin followed closely behind, followed by Huang Fu Liang and the merciless Saber Emperor. Su Yu remained where he was and thought, is there another world within the circle of fire? Su Yu stared at it for a long time. His sharp eyes suddenly noticed that after the four of them entered, a golden pearl gradually appeared in the center of the 5 balls of flame. Su Yu was no stranger to this object. He had come into contact with it back in the Zhenlong continent. Buddha's relic? Su Yu was shocked. Buddha's relic was the essence of a Buddhist monk. Could the Buddha's relic before him be the faceless Buddha's relic? If it was, didn't this Buddha's relic belong to a Path Master? Su Yu could not believe his eyes. The Buddha's relic was probably much more precious than the entire ancient dream altar. Why would it appear in such an obvious place? Su Yu tried to use the power of space to wrap it up and did not encounter any resistance. He successfully obtained the Buddha's relic. The moment he touched it, the majestic power of the way of the Buddha emerged, giving Su Yu a huge impact that he couldn't feel anymore. The most recent time he felt this soul-shaking feeling was when he faced the sinful lady. Is it really the Path Master's relic? How is this possible? Even with Su Yu's calmness, he still felt like he was in a dream. It was very surreal. Whenever he had obtained a precious treasure, it had been through danger or hidden in an extremely deep place. Only this Path Master's relic had been obtained so easily. After thinking about it carefully, Su Yu realized the mystery behind it. It was probably safer to place the Buddha's relic this way. When everyone pinned their hopes on the Path Master's enlightenment, the moment the 5 balls of flame were opened, everyone scrambled to enter it, lest someone else beat them to it. There were only a few who were willing to stay and observe quietly. Su Yu was a special case. His purpose for coming here was not the so-called Path Master's enlightenment. Instead, he was looking for the Tribulation Fairy. He had intended to wait for the merciless Saber Emperor and the others to leave before sensing the mark. That was how he had discovered the Buddha's relic. Haha, the faceless Buddha is also an expert who can see through people's minds. If it had not met me, perhaps no one would have discovered the existence of the Buddha's relic. Su Yu fiddled with it for a while, naturally delighted. Next, Su Yu took out the 5-colored mark. All of a sudden, a clear feeling flashed in his mind. It was here. Su Yu looked up at the endless sea. The Tribulation Fairy was in this tower, on the 2nd floor. Looking around, Su Yu did not find the staircase leading to the 2nd floor. Drip. A drop of ice fell from the ice coffin and turned into a line of words. Sweetheart, it's not easy to go up to the 2nd floor. You must gather all the fragments of the altar, the dead woman said. What's on the 2nd floor? Su Yu's eyes flashed as he asked. Huang Fu Liang had also reminded him to protect the fragments of the altar to prevent others from stealing them. Drip. The Path Master's Buddha's relic. Su Yu's eyes flickered slightly as he suppressed the thoughts in his mind. Calmly, he said, Oh. The Path Master's Buddha's relic was in Su Yu's hands. So, what was on the 2nd floor was not the Buddha's relic. The rumors must have been wrong. From the dead woman's tone, it seemed that she did not know that Su Yu had just obtained the Buddha's relic. Therefore, Su Yu suppressed the thoughts in his mind to avoid being detected by the dead woman. Drip. You don't seem interested in it. The dead woman probed as she noticed Su Yu's unusual behavior. Su Yu said, I am not a Buddhist, so obtaining the Buddha's relic is useless. Drip. That's not true. Sweetheart, you have underestimated the significance of the Buddha's relic. It is the essence of most Buddhist cultivators. Sweetheart, if you can obtain the Buddha's relic and cultivate the Buddhist path, you will have a great chance of becoming a Buddhist master in the future. At the very least, you will become a top-notch divine warrior of heaven and earth. Su Yu's heart was beating wildly. Becoming a path master? Drip. Hee, are you interested? I really want to see you become a monk. Su Yu pondered for a moment before dismissing the thought. Along the way, Su Yu had learned that only one's own path truly belonged to him. Although it was safe to follow the path before him, there was still a limit to it. He could never surpass his predecessors. Although the path of the Faceless Buddha's path of Path Master was attractive, to become a supreme martial artist, he had to find his own path. Drip. Wow. Sweetheart, I love you so much. I did not expect your cultivation to be so low, but your thoughts and awareness are so shocking. Many divine warriors of heaven and earth may not be able to resist the temptation of becoming a path master, but you have such ambition. Yes. I have decided that I will not marry anyone but you. I must have you. Get lost. Su Yu rolled his eyes, then stepped into the ring of fire in front of him. He had already obtained the altar fragments of Wu Xie, Li Chongqing, Tian Jian, and Tian Rulan. Including his own, he had a total of 5. All that was left was to snatch the merciless Saber Emperor, Empress Ziwei, Shui Guanyin, Huangfu Liang, and Lan Yu's fragment. Lan Yu's altar fragment must have fallen into the hands of the merciless Saber Emperor? Su Yu had always been an accurate judge of character. Even though he had not witnessed it with his own eyes, he could almost imagine the scene of the merciless Saber Emperor and Lan Yu facing the last remaining spot in his mind. The abilities of the 4 are unknown, especially Huangfu Liang. Su Yu was deeply fearful of this person. But no matter what, he had to get his hands on their fragments. There was indeed another world within the ring of fire. What he saw was a desolate desert. He could not see the end of it. What is this? Su Yu released his heavenly eyes, but he could not see the end of it. Drip. My luck is terrible. This year's Path Master's Enlightenment test is the most difficult eternal desert. Su Yu said, Tell me in detail. Drip. The Faceless Buddha's path is an arduous training. If you want to obtain his enlightenment, you must undergo arduous training. The more arduous training you endure, the deeper the enlightenment you can share with the Path Master. The desert you see is the eternal desert where the Faceless Buddha trained arduously in the past. There is no end to it, and you must keep walking. When you can't hold on any longer, that will be the end of the test. Is that so? Su Yu thought of the Blue Stone Road. It was almost the same. Drip. No. The Blue Stone Road is just a boring, arduous training. The Eternal Desert not only has endless boring training, but it also has unexpected dangers. Su Yu asked, Is the degree of danger high? Drip. Chapter 1694. Su Yu listened, and it did not seem to be too difficult. With the heavenly eyes, Su Yu could almost avoid all dangers in advance. Tick-tock. This king admires my sweetheart's confidence. However, in a situation where you are unable to replenish your divine power, will you be able to continue using the heavenly eyes? After her reminder, Su Yu suddenly realized that there was no trace of divine power in the eternal desert. In this case, not to mention encountering silver overlords and golden overlords, even if he continuously encountered cave world masters, his divine power would continue to be consumed, and Su Yu's divine power would be depleted. In the long run, it would be difficult to move forward. However, when he really set foot in the eternal desert, Su Yu realized that the biggest difficulty here was still the former. Boring. Almost hopelessly boring. What he saw, felt, and heard, apart from the desert, there was only the desert. He could not see the front, no hope, and no way out. He continued to walk in fear, uneasiness, and directionless. It might not matter if he walked for a day, a month, or a year. Those who could come here were all geniuses who had experienced a lot of training, and had a tough mind. However, what about 10 years? Who could be sure that the path he chose was right and the direction he chose was not wrong? Who could be sure that if he kept walking, he would really get more insights from the Pathmaster. Even more, who could be sure that he was going through a test or experiencing reality? Year after year, the seemingly endless journey shook the heart of the appraiser. 10 years had passed, and Suyu could not remember how many roads he had walked, how long he had walked, and how many dangers he had experienced in the cave world. He only knew that he had to keep walking. If he had the thought of giving up, his hard work would be interrupted immediately. Fortunately, Suyu had great perseverance, and he had experienced 100 years of hard work on the Bluestone Road. His mind was tough and unparalleled. 20 years had passed. Suyu's clothes were torn, but he still persisted in moving forward. 30 years had passed. Suyu's face was full of vicissitudes. He had changed from a young man to a middle-aged man, walking alone in the desert. The determination in his eyes had not been erased by time. 50 years had passed. Suyu looked a little old, and his body was hunched. He was old. The divine power in his body was less than half, and he could only resist the attack of the Silver Overlord and walk slowly in the desert. 80 years had passed. Suyu was old, as if he would fall in the desert the next moment. He didn't even have 10% of his divine power left. He could only use it to defend himself, but his eyes were still bright, with the firmness and stubbornness of his youth. It was as if it would not rest until it had walked through this path. Finally, 100 years had passed. Suyu's bodily functions were rapidly deteriorating, and the divine energy in his body was depleted, which made it even more difficult for him to move an inch in the desert. However, he still maintained his perseverance and walked step by step in the deserted desert, until a huge golden overlord ferocious beast appeared in front of Suyu. A giant claw slammed Suyu's old body onto the ground. Then, Suyu closed his eyes and sank into eternal darkness. In the attic, around the stone statue, Heartless Saber Monarch, Empress Ziwei, Blood Guanyin, and Huangfu Liang all appeared on the first futon cushions. It was as if what they had just experienced was just an illusion and they had never entered the Ring of Fire. However, the expressions of the four of them had somewhat changed. Huangfu Liang's expression was as calm as ever, but Heartless Saber Monarch's face was pale, and beads of sweat were dripping from his forehead. His eyes were haggard and exhausted, as if he had experienced great mental torture. Empress Ziwei was slightly better, but her cold eyes could not conceal the deep exhaustion, and her body was trembling. Blood Guanyin's bright face was also filled with lingering fear, as if she was still immersed in training in the desert. After a long time, they finally distinguished between training and reality, and gradually regained their composure. Heartless Saber Monarch still had lingering fears. What a powerful illusion! I can't tell if it's an illusion or reality after being in it for so long. The silent Blood Guanyin said softly, Senior Faceless Buddha is even more powerful, isn't he? At least we know it's an illusory experience, and that's why we can persevere. But Senior really set foot in the eternal desert alone. What he faced was real despair. I don't know how he went through it. Everyone nodded, their eyes filled with deep admiration. Suddenly, Heartless Saber Monarch noticed that the futon cushion beside Empress Ziwei was empty. Where is that scum? Only then did they realize that Suyu had not returned. He's still in the illusion? Empress Ziwei was surprised. Even strong men like them could not withstand it and had given up training, let alone Suyu. Heartless Saber Monarch said, I think he probably couldn't withstand a year or two of training, and came out early. He knew he couldn't share the Pathmaster's enlightenment, so he simply left. No way. Empress Ziwei looked around. We seem to have experienced many years, but only a few breaths have passed in the outside world. Even if he came out early, he would only be 1 or 2 breaths ahead of us. Even we needed such a long time to distinguish between illusion and reality, let alone him. Blood Guanyin thought for a moment, then said, Could he still be in the illusion? How is that possible? Heartless Saber Monarch said disdainfully, We've been back for half a cup of tea's time. If he's still in the illusion, it's the same as experiencing no less than 100 years. Do you think that's possible? Blood Guanyin pondered and did not speak. That was indeed impossible. Even with their extraordinary cultivation, they could not withstand such a long period of training, let alone him. Empress Ziwei shook her head and said, presumably, he did not enter the illusion and left the pavilion in advance. She looked up at the 5 flames on top of the stone statue and said, let's stimulate our respective flames. It will show us how long we have been in the illusion, and it will also give us the corresponding level of enlightenment of the Path Master. This process was also the most important one. Only when everyone stimulated their respective flames would the enlightenment of the Path Master arrive completely. The 4 of them looked at each other. No one was willing to be the first to try and expose how long they had been training in the illusion. Haha, why don't I take the lead? Huang Fu Liang was exceptionally cheerful. The other 3 shifted their gazes to him, paying close attention. Huang Fu Liang smiled faintly as he flew above the stone statue and placed his palm on the flames. Crackle, the flames flickered randomly, and a line of words appeared. 10 years of training, 1 level of enlightenment of the Path Master. Seeing this, everyone secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Heartless Saber Monarch snorted. Only 10 years? I thought you were so mysterious and powerful. Watch me. With a loud laugh, Heartless Saber Monarch flew over and slammed his palm on the flames. Instantly, there was a loud explosion, and the flames shook violently. The expressions of the others tensed up. The more intense the flames change, the higher the record. As expected, when the line of words appeared in their eyes, everyone's expressions changed subtly. 25 years of training, 2.5 levels of enlightenment of the Path Master. Heartless Saber Monarch was extremely satisfied. With a graceful turn, he landed back on the mat. Blood Guanyin said softly, it's my turn now. Like the wind, her beautiful figure flew before the flames and lightly pressed her palm on it. Puff, 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 instantly, the flames burned intensely. It gave off a sharp crackling sound that was exceptionally ear-piercing. Its momentum was even stronger than Heartless Saber Monarch's. 35 years of training, 3.5 levels of enlightenment of the Path Master. Blood Guanyin smiled shyly and flew back to the mat. Heartless Saber Monarch's expression stiffened slightly. 35 years, 10 years more than him. The seemingly weak Blood Guanyin had such strong willpower, it truly exceeded Heartless Saber Monarch's expectations. Empress Ziwei also gave Blood Guanyin a meaningful glance. She flew over without a word and struck the flame with her palm. Then, she returned to the cushion without looking back. Chi! The flames suddenly expanded to 3 times their original size and gave off an extremely sharp howl, instantly engulfing the other 4 balls of flames. The momentum was astonishing, it made one's heart palpitate. 70 years of training, 7.5 levels of enlightenment of the Path Master. Blood Guanyin was moved as she looked at those words. 70 years, hiss. Heartless Saber Monarch's gaze toward Empress Ziwei was also filled with reverence. Huang Fu Liang nodded approvingly. Not bad, enduring 50 years of training at such a young age, your willpower far surpasses ordinary people. As expected of the Snow Dragon Monarch's successor, the number of 70 years had left them in the dust. Empress Ziwei's expression was as cold as before. She ignored everyone's astonished gazes and stared at the stone statue. A while later, she revealed a look of surprise. Strange, the 4 of us have already ignited the flames. Why hasn't the Path Master's enlightenment descended yet? Everyone else also came to their senses. It is indeed strange. Normally, shouldn't the Path Master's enlightenment descend immediately? Blood Guanyin was puzzled. Heartless Saber Monarch was also puzzled as he stared silently at the stone statue. Only Huang Fu Liang's expression was calm, a mysterious smile on his lips as he muttered, "What a surprising little fellow, to have endured for so long." Rumble. Just as they were in shock, Su Yu's corresponding flame suddenly fluctuated. They were all stunned, clearly not expecting such a scene to occur. Whoosh, a figure was transported out, sitting cross-legged on a mat. Su Yu. Blood Guanyin was shocked. Empress Ziwei and Heartless Saber Monarch were also shocked. They had all thought that Su Yu had not even entered before leaving. Who would have thought that Su Yu had stayed longer than any of them? Heartless Saber Monarch stood up abruptly. Impossible. He's just a small fry, what ability does he have to stay for so long? His eyes were filled with disbelief. Seeing that Su Yu was exhausted and lacking in energy, his eyes flashed, and he was about to take the opportunity to end Su Yu's life. Wait! Empress Ziwei calmly said. She stared at Su Yu, who was beside her, her eyes filled with surprise. If you kill him, who will ignite his corresponding flame? Heartless Saber Monarch forcefully retracted the saber energy in his palm, unwilling to let it go. Humph! I don't believe he could have endured for so long. He must have stayed where he was, not moving an inch, unlike us who have been walking for decades. It wasn't just him. The rest of them could not believe it either. Chapter 1695. After a bout of pain from his soul, Su Yu's spirit finally recovered. He looked around and smiled faintly. Huang Fu Liang said expectantly, Brother Su, we are all waiting for you. Activate your corresponding flame so that the Path Master's comprehension can descend. The other three stared at Su Yu. Empress Ziwei and Shui Guanyin were a little nervous, while the merciless Saber Emperor sneered, as if waiting to see Su Yu make a fool of himself. Su Yu nodded and flew over, pressing his palm onto the flame. However, the flame did not move at all. It did not move at all. The merciless Saber Emperor could not help but laugh. Ha ha! I told you, this little bastard is a piece of trash. In the eternal desert, he has either not moved or slept for 100 years. Empress Ziwei and Shui Guanyin heaved a sigh of relief. Su Yu had stayed for such a long time. However, the strange thing was that the flame remained silent, not even showing any details. Empress Ziwei frowned, squinting at Su Yu. What did you do in there? You can't even show the most basic details? At that moment, Shui Guanyin suddenly exclaimed, Don't you feel that the flame is too quiet? She was born with a blood lotus in her mouth, so her intuition in certain aspects was naturally strong. She felt that Su Yu's flame was very strange. It looked ordinary, but compared to the flames of the other four, it was too quiet. It felt like the silence before the storm. Empress Ziwei took a closer look and also felt that something was amiss. She looked over, preparing to observe more closely. All of a sudden, that ball of flames was like the crater of an erupting volcano, and the flames suddenly exploded. Countless sparks splashed in all directions. The four people present hurriedly used their divine powers to protect themselves, afraid of being affected by the flame. However, the merciless Saber Emperor was laughing, completely unprepared, and was sprayed all over by the scorching flame. The merciless Saber Emperor roared in pain. His face was burned red by the flame, and his facial features twitched violently from the pain. I'll kill you! The merciless Saber Emperor bellowed angrily. He looked up, and a line of words shocked him. Training hard for 100 years, obtaining the 10th level Path Master's comprehension. What? 100 years? Impossible! The merciless Saber Emperor denied instinctively. He couldn't accept this. The trash in his eyes could actually surpass him, cultivating in the eternal desert for 100 years. Even Empress Ziwei couldn't do it, so how could he, a mere cave-abode world venerable, do it? Empress Ziwei was deeply moved as she stared at the line of words in disbelief. 100 years. She had experienced 70 years, and even the taste of it. This kind of despair could not be achieved without great willpower. However, Su Yu had not only achieved 70 years, he had also trained bitterly for a whole 100 years. The Blood Guanyin was also extremely surprised. She stared at Su Yu as if she wanted to imprint him into her mind. Their emotions fluctuated violently as countless thoughts flashed through their minds. Creak! At this moment, the stone statue suddenly moved and creaked. A golden arc shot out from the back of the stone statue's head. Chains of the great Tao laws rolled in the arc, the Daolord's comprehension. Everyone's eyes flickered and fixed on the golden arc. Whoosh! The golden arc was divided into 24 parts. Huang Fu Liang received 1 portion, Heartless Saber Monarch received 2.5 portions, Blood Guanyin received 3.5 portions, and Empress Ziwei received 7 portions. As for Su Yu, he had obtained 10 of them. He alone had obtained almost half of them. Even Empress Ziwei bit her lip, feeling indignant and jealous. After obtaining the comprehension, no one present used it immediately. The Daolord's comprehension was too rare. In the entire sea of constellations, only the ancient dream altar had it. If they used it now, it would be difficult to find it again in the future. They took out different materials one after another. Some were formations, some were elixirs, and some were spiritual liquids, prepared to be used together with the precious Daolord's comprehension. The Blood Guanyin used an elixir from the starry pavilion. It was crystal clear and round like a pearl, emitting a faint green glow. As soon as the elixir appeared, it immediately emitted a rich fragrance. Heartless Saber Monarch looked over and exclaimed, 10,000 years stone spiritual pearl? The so-called stone spiritual pearl was a spiritual pearl that was gradually born from some primordial spirit stones after absorbing the essence of the world. It contained all the essence of the primordial spirit stones, especially the comprehension of the world. This item was very rare. In the history of the Sea of Constellations, it had appeared no more than 10 times. One of them was the 10,000 years stone spiritual pearl. It was a primordial stone fetus that had absorbed the essence of the sun and moon for hundreds of billions of years. Just as it was about to transform and break through to the divine realm of heaven and earth, it was discovered by a group of profound crystal overlords. They forcefully shattered the stone fetus and took the spiritual pearl. One could imagine how majestic the essence contained in this spiritual pearl was. Together with the Daolord's comprehension, it would definitely allow the Blood Guanyin's comprehension to soar, as expected of the disciple that the starry pavilion nurtured with all their might. The 10,000 years stone spiritual pearl that the starry pavilion's chief pavilion master personally bought was actually given to you to use. Heartless Saber Monarch was envious. Although the South Sea Emperor Killer had a strong foundation, compared to the starry pavilion, it was still a level lower. He took out a set of formation flags. The Blood Guanyin glanced at it and smiled. This is the primordial spirit gathering formation. It was created by a Daolord. When comprehending within it, the effect will increase by 30%. It is said to have been lost long ago. The starry pavilion once spent a huge price to search for it, but there were no clues. I didn't expect the Sovereign Killer to have it. Heartless Saber Monarch was slightly proud. Although this item was not as good as the 10,000 years stone spiritual pearl, it was not something that ordinary people could touch. Together with the Daolord's comprehension, he believed that there would be a qualitative leap. However, Heartless Saber Monarch was most concerned about Empress Ziwei. She was still the same as before, with a cold expression as she set up the corresponding comprehension materials. What she took out was a sparkling jade bottle. An exceptionally sparkling and transparent drop of liquid lay quietly in the bottle. Heartless Saber Monarch did not recognize it at first. He had never seen this item before. However, the Blood Guanyin recognized it immediately. Her expression changed drastically as she inhaled lightly. The foundation of the northern region Snow Sea is truly terrifying. They actually found this item. It is truly amazing. Holding the 10,000 years stone spiritual pearl, her eyes were filled with envy. Empress Ziwei was as cold as ice. She said indifferently, "It is just a drop of true spirit Tao elixir. There is nothing special about it." "What? True spirit Tao elixir?" Heartless Saber Monarch did not recognize this item, but he had heard of its famous name. He immediately exclaimed in shock. His eyes burned and faintly revealed greed, and he stared unblinkingly at the jade bottle as he gulped down a mouthful of saliva. This is the spirit liquid formed from the comprehensions left behind by a Dowlord when he comprehended the heavens and the earth? It is said that by smearing it on one's body, one can obtain a portion of the Daolord's comprehension. The blood Guanine nodded deeply, her face filled with regret. Back then, our starry pavilion was fortunate enough to obtain 10 drops. However, over the years, we have bestowed them all to the 3 pavilion masters. One of the pavilion masters was stuck at the divine warrior of heaven and earth for many years. It was because he obtained 3 drops of true spirit Tao elixir that he was lucky enough to break through to become a divine warrior of heaven and earth. What a pity! If there were still some left, combined with the Daolord's comprehension today, I would definitely be able to reach the peak of the glazed crystal overlord. I might even have the chance to touch the divine warrior of heaven and earth. Everyone was envious. Even though it was only 1 drop, its effects far surpassed the 10,000 years stone spiritual pearl and the innate spirit gathering fairy formation. The heartless Saber Monarch looked at Su Yu and sneered. Why? Do you not intend to reveal it? Having obtained so much of the Daolord's comprehension, I believe you must have top-grade materials to complement it? As soon as he said that, even Empress Ziwei could not help but look at him inquisitively. Su Yu shrugged and said indifferently, I am not affiliated with any faction, so I am not as wealthy as you all. Empress Ziwei's eyes were filled with disbelief. Anyone who came for the Daolord's comprehension would have prepared materials to complement it. Otherwise, it would be a reckless waste of God's gift. Right at that moment, Empress Ziwei suddenly realized that the true spirit Tao elixir in her bottle was a little strange. It was pulsing incessantly as if it had found one of its kind. Even through the seal, she could feel his agitation. Empress Ziwei's eyes were like lightning as she locked onto Su Yu. She asked in surprise, You have the true spirit Tao elixir? Su Yu's heart thumped. Not good. He had never intended to take out the jar of true spirit Tao elixir. He was afraid that it would attract trouble. Who would have thought that the true spirit Tao elixir could sense each other? Wait. The sense is very strong. There is definitely more than a little true spirit Tao elixir in your body. There are at least 100 drops. Empress Ziwei was extremely shocked as she stared at the pulsing true spirit Tao elixir. Su Yu's eyes flickered as he grabbed the 10 portions of comprehension in his palm. Then, he stood up and left the pavilion. In fact, even if the true spirit Tao elixir had not been exposed, Su Yu would have left the pavilion immediately. The Daolord's comprehension was already in his hands. What followed next was probably the cruelest battle of all. Whoever could obtain all of the altar's fragments would be qualified to enter the 2nd floor and obtain the legendary Daolord's Buddhist relic. The battle was right before his eyes. If he did not leave now, when would he? Swoosh. Unexpectedly, someone was faster than him. Ha ha, everyone, I will take my leave first. Farewell. Huang Fu Liang was the first to leave the pavilion. Or rather, he was the first to escape. Su Yu cursed inwardly. Why did he have to shout to escape? He quickly strode out. Unexpectedly, a cold gust of wind assaulted him from behind, aiming for his vital parts. Little bastard. You only want to escape now? Unfortunately, it's too late. The merciless Saber Emperor had waited for a long time, and finally had the chance to strike. Without thinking, Su Yu countered some of the sword energy with a backhand strike of the limitless demonic faction. The rest of the sword energy dispersed into hundreds of strands, as if they had a mind of their own, surrounding Su Yu from different directions. No matter how he defended himself, he would be pierced through like a porcupine. Su Yu threw out a snow-white handkerchief. 7 beautiful fairies appeared in the handkerchief, each playing a celestial zither and playing powerful musical notes. The musical notes swept out in all directions, wiping out all of the sword energy. Seizing the opportunity, Su Yu stepped out of the pavilion. The merciless Saber Emperor's expression was cold. The wonderful sound pavilion's 7 zither technique? Humph! With a suction force from his palm, he took away the innate spirit-gathering fairy formation and immediately chased after Su Yu. Chapter 1696. He was the only one who knew how many fragments of the altar Su Yu had. A total of 5 fragments. Moreover, among everyone present, he was obviously the easiest to kill. With a sinister smile, the merciless Saber Emperor immediately gave chase. When he gave chase, he only sensed a ball of chaotic yin and yang energy before Su Yu disappeared without a trace. Haha, the central area is only so big, let's see where you can run to. The merciless Saber Emperor was filled with rage. At the same time, only Empress Ziwei and Shui Guanyin were left in the pavilion. The interlude just now had caused a slight change in their somewhat harmonious atmosphere. Shui Guanyin put away the 10,000-year spiritual stone orb and said gently, "I have something to do and will take my leave first." Empress Ziwei said coldly, "You can leave, but leave behind the altar fragments." Shui Guanyin stopped in her tracks, an unnatural expression on her face. "Empress Ziwei, you wish to fight me?" "Fight?" Empress Ziwei raised her eyes, and a bone-chilling aura slowly seeped out. "You are not my match. Before I want to embarrass the Star Pavilion, put down the altar fragment and you can leave." "What if I say no?" Shui Guanyin's eyes narrowed into crescents. Empress Ziwei's body was covered in a layer of ice, like an ice armor, making her look even more heroic. "Then don't leave." "Haha, I've long wanted to try how great Empress Ziwei is." Shui Guanyin was unwilling to admit defeat, the blood lotus beneath her feet slowly rotating. Bang! The two immediately clashed. Su Yu used the yin-yang tai chi wings to teleport to a remote area. Perhaps because of the encounter with the hidden demon beast, the demons in the area had left their nests and formed groups to search for the beast. Only then could Su Yu find a place that was safe from danger. But safety was only temporary, Su Yu understood. The only safety was himself. After confirming that there were no hidden dangers, Su Yu immediately took out the dragon pearl. If he could break through to Overlord, he would be able to fight them without any pressure. Because of the influence of the white snow sword, I can only refine half of it. I'll be able to refine it in another 5 days, Su Yu said. He seized the time to realize it in front of everyone. A day later, Su Yu had successfully refined a part of it once again. In another 4 days, he would be able to completely refine the dragon pearl. At that time, he would be able to break through to the level of a ruler with the help of the boundless divine dragon energy in the dragon pearl. Right at that moment, Su Yu suddenly opened his eyes. He did not move, still maintaining the posture of concealing his aura. He quietly released the heavenly eyes and observed the surroundings. What caused his pupils to shrink was that, under the observation of his heavenly eyes, the shadow of the hidden demon beast had appeared not far from where Su Yu was hiding. It cautiously crawled out of a beast's nest, its body covered in the beast's blood, emitting the aura of a dead beast. If other grand demons had not come personally to confirm, they would not have discovered that a ferocious beast had been killed based on its aura alone. They would never realize that the hidden demon beast that they had been searching for had been hiding beside them all along. Su Yu was secretly shocked. What a cunning hidden demon beast! The other great demons all thought that the hidden devil beast had found a secret place to hide, but it was hiding right under their noses, secretly hunting them. Not long after the hidden devil beast left, sure enough, it dragged the corpse of a golden overlord into its lair. Staring at the swamp, Su Yu watched the hidden demon beast crawl into the swamp with his own eyes. It was best not to go to that swamp unless it was absolutely necessary. Even this place was not safe. If Su Yu was training and the hidden demon beast suddenly barged in, just the thought of it made Su Yu shudder. Ah, I have to change places again, Suyu said. He flashed a few times and came to a mountainous area. The forest was very dense, and there was a miasma that blocked off senses. Suyu's eyes lit up. This was a good place to hide. With a thought, Suyu dove in. After a careful search, he found a cave under a cliff. Good place, Suyu secretly praised. Without thinking, he leaped into the cave. Just as he entered, a blood-red light suddenly slashed at Suyu's head. The miasma affected senses, so Suyu did not immediately notice that there was someone inside. He had thought it was a remote, barren land. Who would have thought there was someone inside? Dark Night Meteor Thrust. Suyu waved his sword without hesitation, shattering the incoming blood-red light. Then, his eyes turned cold and he swept his sword into the cave. Are you Deputy Pavilion Master Shueyu? A slightly familiar, weak voice came from inside. Suyu was stunned. Blood Guanyin? It's you? After a pause, Suyu said, Since you found this place first, I shall take my leave. Deputy Pavilion Master Shui, please wait. Don't wander around without permission. It's dangerous outside. Blood Guanyin said hurriedly. From her tone, she seemed a little weak. Suyu's eyes flashed. Please explain. Empress Ziwei is looking for me outside. If you continue to expose yourself, you will be discovered. Hearing that, Suyu shuddered. After a moment's hesitation, he entered the cave. What he saw was the pale blood Guanyin. The blood lotus under her feet was also broken and dim. It was obvious that blood Guanyin's injuries were severe. Even though the blood lotus was providing her with a steady stream of energy to help her recover, her injuries were recovering very slowly. You are severely injured. Allowing me in, aren't you afraid that I'll take away your altar fragment? Suyu asked directly. Blood Guanyin forced a smile. If it's Deputy Pavilion Master Shui, you can rest assured. This is what Pavilion Master Mu said. Are you familiar with Pavilion Master Mu? Suyu asked. Blood Guanyin said indifferently, I'm not, but your character has spread throughout the upper echelons of the Starry Pavilion. Suyu did not ask further. He sheathed his Azura sword and stared at her left shoulder. Her entire shoulder was dark green. Layers of cold energy could be seen slowly dissipating from her shoulder, spreading to every part of her body. Under the increasingly severe cold energy, not only did her body not recover, but it became even weaker. Based on this situation, it was only a matter of time before she was eliminated. Was it Empress Ziwei who was injured? That was not difficult to guess. What was difficult to guess was how powerful Empress Ziwei was. Blood Guanyin was known as the most powerful heaven ruler in the history of the Starry Pavilion, destined to become a pavilion master in the future. Even such a person was no match for Empress Ziwei. The latter's strength was truly unimaginable. If you had not used the Dark Night Meteor Thrust, I really would not have guessed that Suyu was Shueyu, Blood Guanyin said slowly, her lips turning green. Suyu said, Let's deal with your injuries first. Blood Guanyin forced a smile. No need, my injuries can only be treated by the Pavilion Master. Normal methods are useless. She coughed a few times. Even the blood she coughed out was filled with cold energy. It was obvious that the cold energy had penetrated deep into her bones. If she did not receive treatment in time, she would be finished. Suyu said, If that's the case, why don't you leave the central area earlier? Can't bear to leave the second level of the pavilion? No. Blood Guanyin shook her head. My goal is only to obtain the Path Master's enlightenment. I have no intention of getting my hands on the second level. Then you. Suyu took a look at her extremely serious injuries. Blood Guanyin laughed bitterly. I've persisted until now because I don't want to let that ice woman take advantage of me. She took out her altar fragment and said weakly, Originally, I wanted to find a secluded and quiet place to hide this item so that that woman could not get her hands on it. I didn't expect you to come. She handed over the altar fragment. I'll give this fragment to you. It was obvious that she had no ill intentions. She sincerely wanted to give it to Suyu. The reason was that they used to belong to the Starry Pavilion. Suyu was speechless. You don't want it? Blood Guanyin asked. Suyu shook his head. You gave it to me because you were unwilling. I won't feel good even if I accept it. If that's the case, why don't you strike that woman once before deciding what to do next? Blood Guanyin was indeed unwilling. She had thought of leaving the ancient dream altar, but not in such a defeated manner. But what else could she do? She pointed at her injuries, which continued to spread, and said bitterly, Do you think I still have the ability to strike back with my injuries? Suyu smiled faintly. He tapped the ice coffin on his back and said, Get up and work. Tick-tock. Does a lover refer to the kind where a man and a woman work together? If it's a lover, I don't mind settling it here. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Suyu was speechless. He pointed at Blood Guanyin's injuries. Both are injured by the cold energy. You should have a way, right? Tick-tock, I refuse. My lover is my man. You are not allowed to be nice to other women, or I'll show you how jealous I am. Suyu's face darkened. He said, It's a serious matter. After a while, a drop of ice dripped from the ice coffin. All right, who asked me to feel sorry for my lover? You occasionally sneak up on me, and I can only swallow the bitterness in my stomach, boo-hoo. Then, an even more shocking cold energy was released from the ice coffin, and it suddenly passed through Blood Guanyin's body. Blood Guanyin groaned in pain, and immediately said in surprise, The cold energy has been sucked away. The ice injury on her shoulder was swept away, and even the cold energy that had penetrated deep into her bones was sucked away, leaving not a single trace behind. Her pale face regained its rosy color, and she was exceptionally beautiful. Blood Guanyin stared deeply at the ice coffin, then looked at Suyu gratefully. Her expression was a little strange. Thank you. Yes, congratulations too. Suyu was a little confused. Thank you? He could understand. Congratulations? Why? Suyu touched his chin suspiciously, but was interrupted by Blood Guanyin. Are you coming with me, or are you staying here? Suyu said, How strong is she? Blood Guanyin bit her lip and said in a low voice, Unexpectedly strong. When I fought with her, I thought it would take 100 rounds to determine who was stronger, but in the end, I was injured by her after only 3 rounds. If not for the blood lotuses, perhaps I would have been eliminated long ago. She looked weak, but she had her own pride. Being defeated by a peer, especially by a woman who was on par with her in every aspect, she was extremely unwilling. 3 rounds? Suyu was shocked. Do you have any ideas for these questions? Blood Guanyin asked. Suyu's eyes were filled with thought, and he said leisurely, I am thinking of a way to defeat her, or at least eliminate her. Eliminate her? Are you sure I can do it? Blood Guanyin was shocked by Suyu's bold ideas. Defeating her strong opponent in 3 moves, how could she eliminate her? Deep in Suyu's eyes, there was a long-lost brilliance. There is nothing impossible in this world. Everything depends on human effort. Chapter 1697. Crack. The sound of ice cracking reverberated in the cave. The bone-chilling cold spread along the cliff, and the cave was not spared. The walls were covered in frost. Shui Guanyin's expression tightened. It's coming again. It's getting closer and closer. It looks like it's only a matter of time before we are discovered. If you have any plans, execute them immediately. Once discovered, I will be eliminated, and you won't be able to escape. Suyu smiled mysteriously. My plan is to be discovered by her. What? Shui Guanyin exclaimed. Before she could react, Suyu grabbed her arm. With the yin-yang wings of Supreme Pole, he disappeared with Shui Guanyin. The remnants of yin and yang energy were extremely conspicuous. Not long after, an arrogant woman clad in ice appeared in the cave. She pointed with her slender fingers, grasping the remnants of yin and yang energy. Her cold eyes turned as she said in a low voice, "So you were hiding here. Let's see where you can run to." Creak! The ice on her back suddenly transformed into a pair of wings that radiated cold air. With a wave of her hand, the ice woman instantly disappeared from where she stood, leaving only traces of ice shards behind her. The wind howled, and Shui Guanyin was a little annoyed. "Su Yu, is this your plan?" She couldn't believe that Su Yu had lured Empress Ziwei out just like that. Su Yu said seriously, "Yes, this is the plan." Shui Guanyin said angrily, "I can't last more than 3 rounds in a fair duel. Isn't this asking for death? The worst plan is to choose a good time to launch a sneak attack, right?" She regretted listening to Su Yu's suggestion. Sneak attack? With the gap between you and her, do you think a sneak attack will work? Su Yu shook his head. "She is looking for you everywhere. Her guard is at its highest. Your sneak attack is just playing into her hands." Shui Guanyin pouted. "Even so, you shouldn't have just shown yourself. What are our chances of winning in a fair duel?" Su Yu looked at her and sighed. "Is there nothing else in your mind besides training? Who told you we must have a fair duel?" Hearing this, Shui Guanyin pouted. "As if you are very smart, humph." In Su Yu's eyes, the blood Guanyin was like a flower in a greenhouse. When facing an enemy on the battlefield, one's own strength is important, but if the enemy is too strong, then one needs to borrow strength. Make use of the right time, the right place, and the right people. Su Yu was like an experienced senior, carefully teaching her. The blood Guanyin turned her head, extremely unconvinced. It was true that Su Yu received unanimous praise from the higher-ups of the Starry Tower. But that was only limited to the language of the outsiders. In terms of martial arts and cultivation, he had never been deliberately mentioned by the higher-ups. For example, how should you deal with Empress Ziwei, who is stronger than you? If that's the case, you'll have to rely on external forces, Su Yu said. Blood Guanyin grumbled, "She's not taller than me. Wait till I digest the Tao Master's comprehension. Who knows who will be better than who?" However, she was still curious about Su Yu's so-called borrowing of power. "Do we have any external help to borrow?" Shui Guanyin looked around. Other than the two of them, who else would be willing to help them? Su Yu said with a faint smile, "Any external force can be borrowed. The more unexpected, the better the effect." Unexpected? Shui Guanyin scratched her head. She really couldn't think of any external force that she could borrow. Looking at the mysterious Su Yu, Shui Guanyin was very unconvinced. You're clearly inferior to me in martial arts and cultivation, and yet you act like you're teaching me. I'll see what external force you can borrow." Shui Guanyin thought to herself. At that moment, she suddenly realized that Su Yu had plucked out a strand of hair, chopping it into several pieces and throwing them into the air. Shui Guanyin said, "Are you crazy? The strand of hair contains your scent. If it is exposed, the merciless Saber Emperor who is hunting you will sense it immediately." Su Yu said indifferently, "So, didn't I say? You need to know how to borrow power. The power of the merciless Saber Emperor can also be borrowed." Shui Guanyin's mouth opened wide, looking at Su Yu and shaking her head. "Crazy. You really are crazy. The merciless Saber Emperor would help them deal with Empress Ziwei? She wouldn't believe it even if she was beaten to death." Putting aside the fact that the merciless Saber Emperor might not be willing to take the risk to fight the powerful Empress Ziwei, the relationship between the two of them was absolutely impossible. "Don't you know that Empress Ziwei is engaged to the merciless Saber Emperor's big brother, the Limitless Sword Saint? She is the sister-in-law of the merciless Saber Emperor, so they are considered family. Why do you think the merciless Saber Emperor will help you?" Shui Guanyin shook her head, sighing. She felt that she had been tricked by Su Yu this time. Su Yu said confidently, "Because my brain is better than yours." Shui Guanyin rolled her eyes at him. "What kind of lousy ideas are you coming up with? You're not even as good as me. How dare you call yourself smart?" Sizzle, Suddenly, a wave of cold air swept over. Shui Guanyin shuddered, suddenly looking behind her, her tone low. She's coming. Coming. Su Yu's gaze wavered. Using the yin-yang wings of Supreme Pole, he crossed millions of miles in an instant. He had just appeared when two giant ice swords, each 1,000,000 feet long, pierced toward him from the end of the world. Shui Guanyin's eyes turned serious, pushing Su Yu away. Get out of the way. Lotus blooming with every step. Shui Guanyin turned around and took a step forward. With every step, a blood lotus bloomed beneath her feet. With every 3 steps, 3 blood lotuses appeared. Between the blood lotuses, the color of blood connected to form a barrier. The 2 majestic giant swords pierced the barrier like paper, shattering into ice inch by inch. In terms of defense alone, it was comparable to a peak golden overlord. Shui Guanyin's expression was still serious. This is merely a low-level divine technique used by Empress Ziwei to delay us. If you have a plan, then do it quickly. Su Yu looked around. The plan has already begun. You can fight with ease. Shui Guanyin was so angry she almost vomited blood. She turned around and glared at Su Yu. Are you sure the plan has already begun? What happened to the external help? Su Yu smiled without saying a word, fleeing in a flash. Ah. Be asterisk starred. Shui Guanyin was angry and upset. She had actually been betrayed at the last moment. She had trusted Su Yu so much. Tears welled up in her eyes. Shui Guanyin took a deep breath, staring at the giant ice wings speeding toward her. She gritted her teeth. Come on. Empress Ziwei. Whoosh, a strong, icy wind blew past. Empress Ziwei's lofty, peerless figure descended. Her powerful aura intimidated everyone. Her entire body was covered in ice armor, giving off an unparalleled pressure. Just facing this woman made Shui Guanyin feel immense pressure. She could not help but clench her fists to suppress the nervousness in her heart. Empress Ziwei's frosty eyes looked around and said indifferently, Where's the person with you? Shui Guanyin was angry with Su Yu, but she had no intention of betraying him. Who do you want me to be with? Empress Ziwei shook her head. You alone cannot dispel my cold energy. Furthermore, that wisp of yin and yang energy is not yours. A hint of anger appeared between her brows. You are looking down on me, she shouted. I am not looking down on you. You really cannot do it, Empress Ziwei said. She immediately retracted her searching gaze. If that is the case, I will deal with you first. I will then take my time to find that person. Creak. A ball of white ice gathered in her palm, emitting a shocking cold energy. Shui Guanyin's eyes were extremely serious. Bai Jihan. Clenching her teeth, the blood lotus beneath Shui Guanyin's feet spun rapidly, shooting out 9 blood lotus seeds. 9 seeds of 1 heart. The 9 blood lotus seeds sank into the soil and immediately sprouted on the spot. They quickly grew to a height of 100 feet and blossomed into beautiful lotus flowers. Gurgle. Each flower blossomed slowly, and a figure shockingly appeared within the flower. Her appearance was identical to Shui Guanyin's. Even her cultivation level was the same. Empress Ziwei's eyes were cold and unwavering. Same old trick. Dream-breaking ice palm. Empress Ziwei activated the ice wings behind her, leaving an afterimage in the sky as she struck toward Shui Guanyin's head. The 9 lotus seeds of Shui Guanyin looked up and cast their divine techniques at the same time. Each divine technique was different, but they all had the power of a golden overlord. It was easy to defend against one technique, but difficult to defend against 9. Empress Ziwei was facing 9 golden overlords alone. The pressure was unimaginable. However, Empress Ziwei's divine eyes were as cold as ever. Her snowy face was as cold as an iceberg. Ice release. Empress Ziwei shouted. Her body disappeared on the spot, leaving only pieces of ice behind. Her true body appeared behind the 2 lotus seeds and struck the backs of the 2 lotus seeds with a palm full of white frost. In an instant, the 2 lotus seed incarnations were frozen into ice shards from the inside out by the snow-white cold air. She did not even look at the result and used ice release again. Every time she appeared, she was able to destroy the 2 lotus seeds. After 4 times, only 1 lotus seed and Shui Guanin's true body were left. Shui Guanin's eyes were filled with indignation. She sat cross-legged on the blood lotus, and put her palms together as if she was meditating. A blood-colored halo rose from her back, making her face appear peaceful, benevolent, and serene. Under the halo, the hearts of all living beings were cleansed. They became ethereal, pure, and devoid of evil. Empress Ziwei's true body also stopped killing. Her eyes were blank and blank. The white frost in her palm also slowly retracted. Using this opportunity, the remaining lotus seed incarnation used a divine technique and stabbed toward her vitals. The divine light flashed and was about to pierce through Empress Ziwei. However, at this moment, Empress Ziwei's lips curled into a mocking smile. The white frost that was retracted erupted dozens of times again. The ice destruction divine technique landed on the last lotus seed incarnation and completely shattered it into ice shards. You can't purify me. Empress Ziwei's cold face revealed a cold smile like that of a ruler. Shui Guanin was neither happy nor sad. She formed a wish seal with one hand and pressed down with her right hand. Instantly, a sky-high blood-colored light surged out from the blood lotus, covering it from the sky to the ground. Within the blood-colored light, a giant hand as large as heaven and earth slowly slammed down from the sky. Evil suppression seal. The giant hand crashed down and suppressed Empress Ziwei. Empress Ziwei stretched out her right hand. A ball of white frost shot out in an attempt to block the palm. Chapter 1698. With a loud rumble, the ground nearby was pressed down by several thousand feet. Empress Ziwei's body sank deep into the mud, unable to free herself. Under the pressure of the bloody palm, layers of black gas emitted from her body, flowing out continuously. Her crystal-clear eyes were now covered in black. She raised her eyes, anger finally surging on her icy face. This is the end. Empress Ziwei's body suddenly turned snow-white. Her entire body, from the inside out, had turned into white ice. Boundless white extreme frost erupted in a terrifying manner. The giant palm was instantly destroyed by the terrifying white extreme coldness. Moreover, the cold air rose against the current, heading straight for Blood Guanin. The bloody light around Blood Guanin wavered, transforming into a giant refinement barrier in front of her. But it still could not withstand the eruption of the white extreme coldness, and was smashed into pieces. The remaining white extreme coldness wrapped around Blood Guanin without any resistance. Blood Guanin's divine techniques were broken one after another, her face pale. Sigh, I tried my best. I'm not strong enough, I can't blame anyone else. Blood Guanin sighed and took out the altar fragment from her sleeve. Just as she was about to throw it away, a layer of space energy suddenly wrapped around her. The next moment she was taken away. Empress Ziwei's attack missed, and her beautiful face showed signs of anger. There is indeed an expert nearby. Her icy eyes shot deep into the ground, her nostrils flaring, and she chased after it without thinking. Frozen Ice Nation. Even underground, Empress Ziwei was powerful beyond compare. With a single thought, she turned the ground into ice. Walking underground like this was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Blood Guanin was rescued. Feeling the hand holding her, she knew who it was without looking. She said angrily, "You still have the face to come back? Is this your plan?" Su Yu smiled and said nothing, moving forward with difficulty in the frozen ground. Behind them, the cold continued to approach. Empress Ziwei was about to catch up. "Where are you taking me?" Blood Guanin was furious. Su Yu smiled mysteriously. "Borrowing strength, of course." "Borrowing strength? Now?" Blood Guanin was about to faint from anger. She had been fighting for so long, but Su Yu had not brought any external help. Now that she was about to leave, external help came. Suddenly, Blood Guanine sensed something and said in shock, "Wait, there's a very strong, ferocious beast ahead." "You're right. That's its lair." Suyu turned around and smiled. Then, the power of space gushed out from his body, enveloping Suyu and the Blood Guanine, and they disappeared together. When Empress Ziwei caught up with them, Suyu and the others had already left the underground. Empress Ziwei was about to give chase when she suddenly caught a glimpse of the place where Suyu had left, leaving behind a battle axe. The battle axe was a one-time consumable item, and it had already been activated. When she arrived, the battle axe exploded with a boom. A violent roar shook the ground nearby. Empress Ziwei's eyes were indifferent, and she casually waved a hand to disperse the shockwaves of the explosion. An attack of this level was completely useless against Empress Ziwei. She tiptoed and was about to break through the frozen ground to chase after Suyu and the Blood Guanine. However, the explosion just now had alarmed a certain vicious creature hidden deep underground. Crack! The frozen ground suddenly ruptured, and 4 thin and sharp limbs pierced through the frozen ground before grabbing onto Empress Ziwei. Only then did Empress Ziwei notice the existence of this vicious creature. "Scram!" Empress Ziwei yelled coldly. Her entire body emanated a powerful white extreme chill, freezing the limbs into ice shards. But the result was that the limbs were not afraid of the white extreme chill. At the same time, a sharp head chewed through the frozen ground, revealing its true appearance. It was an extremely cunning and sinister demon. The hidden demon beast? Empress Ziwei's expression changed drastically. She knew a little about the records of this creature. It was a vicious, cunning beast. It usually hid very well and was very good at sneak attacks, often able to seize the most opportune moment. The explosion just now had instantly disrupted Empress Ziwei's sense of danger in the outside world, and the hidden demon beast had seized the opportunity to capture Empress Ziwei. What was even more unfortunate was that this place happened to be the hidden demon beast's lair. "Blood Guanine!" Empress Ziwei bellowed coldly, finally realizing that she had been tricked. Above the swamp, the Blood Guanine stared at the violent, surging waves of battle below, dumbfounded. "The ferocious beast is the external force you were talking about?" The Blood Guanine was finally somewhat comforted. Suyu nodded, then shook his head slightly. "It is not a normal ferocious beast, but a hidden demon beast that is close to becoming a glazed crystal overlord. 3 years ago, it successfully ambushed a glazed crystal overlord top-notch great demon." "What? Hidden demon beast?" Clearly, the Blood Guanine from the Starry Pavilion was very knowledgeable. "It's such a troublesome great demon?" Shui Guanine's expression was very interesting. She was shocked, shouted, and then laughed incessantly. She gloated and said, "Demon-subduing beast, this is a rare monster that rarely fails to capture its prey. If someone of the same level were to encounter it, they would not be able to avoid it. Furthermore, this one is about to become a glazed crystal overlord. Even if Empress Ziwei doesn't die, I think she'll lose a layer of skin." The Blood Guanine giggled, her gloomy mood swept away. She let out a sigh of relief. Even if she backed out now, she would not feel too much regret. But when she regained her composure, the Blood Guanine stared at Suyu suspiciously. She bared her teeth and said unkindly, "Humph! If you had such a ferocious beast, why didn't you lure her here from the start? I was almost injured by her again." Suyu said, "If you had not angered her, with her vigilance, would she have fallen for your trap so easily?" "No." The Blood Guanine thought for a moment, then said with certainty, "Based on the 2 times I fought her, even though she is confident in her own abilities, she is terrifyingly experienced. She would not have easily chased me into an unknown danger zone. If she had fled into the swamp from the start, Empress Ziwei would not have acted rashly. Only by fighting her a few times and angering her would she lose some of her vigilance." Thinking of this, the Blood Guanine looked at Suyu curiously. She did not understand why Suyu, who did not look much older than her, was so smart. Understanding people's hearts, setting up ingenious plans, seizing opportunities, and so on, he was as experienced as an old demon that had lived for thousands of years. It was as if he was very familiar with these things. The blood guanine was a little unconvinced. "All right, I admit that you are a little smart, but only a little." Su Yu smiled, staring at the raging swamp below him. "Actually, this is only the beginning of my plan. If I really want to carry it out, I need your help." The blood guanine came closer, her clear eyes blinking. Su Yu had completely piqued her curiosity. What is it? Tell me first." The blood guanine's heart was itching. She wanted nothing more than to pry open Su Yu's brain and see what was inside. Su Yu stared at her, his tone strange. "I can only tell you that I will not only teach Empress Ziwei a lesson, but I will also eliminate her." "Huh!" The blood guanine's eyes widened in disbelief. "What do you want to do?" Su Yu's tone became mysterious. A strange and cold feeling swept toward the blood guanine. Along with it was a silent Shura sword. It came out of Su Yu's sleeves and stabbed toward the defenseless Shui guanine without warning. Su Yu, you want to kill me?" The blood guanine couldn't believe her eyes. His mind went blank as he stared at the giant sword that was about to pierce his chest. She couldn't understand why Su Yu was on her side just now, but now he wanted to kill her? Su Yu's attack was too fast, too sudden, too merciless. The blood guanine couldn't react in time. She watched as the giant sword pierced her vitals. Ding! The ancient dream altar sensed the danger blood guanine was in, producing a powerful wave that blocked the giant sword. She was spared death, but the price was elimination. The altar fragment flew out from her sleeves and landed in Su Yu's palm. The blood guanine shook her head in disbelief. Why would Su Yu do this? If he wanted the altar fragment, she would have given it to him as long as he had asked. Why would he betray her and give her a sword? The sword didn't hurt her body, but it hurt her heart. It was hard to trust someone, but she was betrayed in the blink of an eye. Her figure slowly dissipated, and the image of Su Yu playing with the altar fragment was reflected in her eyes. That expression, that figure, so blurry and so unfamiliar. "I'll teach you one last time. Don't trust people too much," Su Yu said calmly. The blood guanine was swept out of the ancient dream altar. Keeping the altar fragment expressionlessly, Su Yu said, "Come out, merciless Saber Emperor. You've been hiding there for a long time, haven't you?" Rumble, rumble, in the forest not far away, ancient trees were trampling and rocks were flying. A haughty figure standing on a giant saber had his arms crossed in front of his chest. He sneered. "Ha ha, how exciting! I always thought you were a gentleman, Su Yu. I didn't expect you to be a hypocrite. You could really bear to use that sword. I'm sure blood guanine must be devastated," the merciless Saber Emperor said sarcastically as he looked at Su Yu. Su Yu's expression was indifferent. "Those who want to achieve great things don't bother with trifles. I only met her by chance. So what if I took her fragment?" The merciless Saber Emperor laughed. "Those who want to achieve great things don't bother with trifles. Although you're a good-for-nothing, what you said is true." Immediately, his gaze froze and he sneered. "Now you should understand what kind of choice you have to make in order to achieve great things for me. Hand over all the altar fragments you have, and I'll let you go. Otherwise, you'll be tortured to death." Su Yu was indifferent. He clasped his hands behind his back. If a person has no foresight, he'll be digging his own grave, let alone achieving great things. The merciless Saber Emperor laughed coldly. "Stop trying to reason with me. Hand over the fragment while my attitude toward you has changed a little. I don't want to attack you anymore." Su Yu's expression was calm. "Haha, a person is invincible when they are stupid. If you take my fragment, you can achieve great things for yourself? Unless your great things are not the Buddhist relics in the second level of the attic." Having his thoughts exposed, the merciless Saber Emperor's pupils shrank. His gaze was cold. The giant saber under his feet flew over with a whoosh, slashing toward Suyu. You talk too much. Chapter 1699. If you kill me, what will happen to Empress Ziwei? Or do you think you can eliminate Empress Ziwei all by yourself? Clang, as the giant blade slashed towards Suyu, it changed direction, brushing past his shoulder and shooting into the ancient tree behind him. With a splintering sound, the inside of the ancient tree was ground into pieces by the blade energy. The rumbling of the ancient tree spread in all directions. The merciless Saber Emperor beckoned the giant sword back, staring at Suyu. What makes you think I would attack my future sister-in-law? Suyu calmly said, because those who achieve great things do not bother with trifles. The merciless Saber Emperor stared at Suyu for a moment, then suddenly looked up and laughed. Ha 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 ha, I'm starting to like you. Other than the fact that you make me unhappy, some of your thoughts and actions are very much to my liking. If not for your low cultivation level and useless abilities, I would have considered taking you under my wing. Suyu said, it's too early to say. The merciless Saber Emperor's gaze turned serious. Then tell me, how do you plan to eliminate Empress Ziwei? Very simple, just learn from the hidden demon beast. Catch her off guard and attack her unprepared. Suyu said concisely. The merciless Saber Emperor's eyes narrowed. You want me to sneak an attack on her? That's too difficult. She fell for the hidden demon beast's trick once, and she will not fall for it a second time. Suyu smiled, his whole body giving off an unfathomable aura. The essence of tricking is never how stupid the prey is, but how perfect the trap is. The merciless Saber Emperor was slightly surprised. Elaborate. Suyu pointed at himself. When you capture me, the culprit who almost killed her, do you think she will be more angry than calm, or more rational than impulsive? The merciless Saber Emperor's eyes lit up. Without a doubt, it was the former. It still won't work, the merciless Saber Emperor said. She is already a frightened bird and will not easily believe me. Suyu said leisurely, then, what if you voluntarily hand over your altar fragment? Wouldn't that be self-elimination? The merciless Saber Emperor said angrily. However, as he spoke, he stopped abruptly, mulling over his words. A moment later, his eyes lit up as he stared at Suyu. Playing hard to get? What she got in return was Suyu's faint smile. The emotionless Saber Monarch made several deductions in his mind, and he felt that this plan was feasible. If everything went smoothly, there was a high chance that he would be able to ambush Empress Ziwei. From another perspective, if he wanted to obtain all the fragments of the sacrificial altar, he couldn't avoid Empress Ziwei. This might be their only chance. In that case, not only could Suyu not kill him, but he also had to cooperate with him. Of course, after killing Empress Ziwei, his fate was obvious. After the heartless Saber Emperor confirmed this plan, he looked at Suyu and suddenly felt a little fearful. This kid's cultivation wasn't much, but when it came to scheming against people, he was extremely accurate. He tried to put himself in Empress Ziwei's shoes. If he were Empress Ziwei, he probably wouldn't want to face this guy either. The heartless Saber Emperor squinted his eyes and said, You should have your own motives, right? Are you planning to use me to get rid of Empress Ziwei, and then use the opportunity to get rid of me? Suyu replied calmly. Do you think that my cultivation is superior to yours? Heartless Saber Monarch said confidently, I can crush you to death with one finger. That's right. My cultivation is not worthy of such great ambitions, I know that very well, Suyu said calmly. All I want is to defeat Empress Ziwei. Why? Heartless Saber Emperor asked. There is no enmity between you and her. Why do you want to defeat her? Suyu paused, then said, Because I once courted Empress Ziwei and was deeply humiliated by her. From that moment on, I swore that one day I would make her regret it. So, Suyu clenched his fists, his face full of hatred. So I teamed up with Shui Guanyin and you, just to eliminate her. Hearing this, heartless Saber Emperor opened his mouth, unable to question it, because this reason was too justifiable. Empress Ziwei was a peerless beauty. She was so beautiful that any woman who claimed to be beautiful would feel ashamed of themselves in front of her. She had unparalleled potential. She was a golden overlord, strong martial artist in her early 20s, and one of the best of her level. She had an unattainable background. She was the descendant of the snow dragon divine warrior. This identity alone was enough to make all women unable to compare. Who would not be tempted by such a perfect woman? There were as many people pursuing her as the hairs on a cow. Not only were there outstanding youths of the current generation, but there were also many famous old monsters who had come to visit her. And there were too many people like Su Yu who had been mercilessly rejected, and even mocked, including heartless Saber Emperor himself, who had secretly asked her for his love. In the end, Empress Ziwei had said, "Reincarnate again," and rejected him. Later, Empress Ziwei was engaged to his big brother, the Wuji Sword Saint. Heartless Saber Emperor was still brooding over this. Hearing that Su Yu had also been rejected, not only did he not suspect anything, but he instead sympathized with Su Yu. He patted Su Yu's shoulder. "It must have been hard on you to actually go this far. Over the years, how many people had been mocked by the arrogant Empress Ziwei? There were countless people who wanted to avenge their humiliation and take revenge on her. But there was no one other than Su Yu who had truly gone this far." Su Yu thought for a moment, then took out 5 fragments of the sacrificial altar and handed them to heartless Saber Emperor. "I'll give them all to you. I hope you can grant me my wish to avenge my humiliation." This time, heartless Saber Emperor had complete trust in Su Yu. He was even willing to give him all the fragments of the sacrificial altar. What else was there not to trust? "Don't worry, I will definitely help you." Even heartless Saber Emperor felt some sympathy for this fellow. Su Yu nodded. "I'll leave everything to you." The two of them stared at the swamp below. The ripples of the battle continued for a long time, until a light rebuke pierced through the swamp and soared into the sky. Extreme Ice Feast. A vast expanse of cold air surged out from the depths of the swamp. The tumbling swamp froze into ice in an instant, and everything within a radius of tens of millions of miles was turned into a world of frozen ice. Mountains, grass, trees, and even some great demons of the Golden Overlord level were frozen in an instant. Within a radius of tens of millions of miles, it became a silent kingdom of ice and snow. Crack! Under the frozen swamp, the ice suddenly shattered, and a proud woman covered in cold air broke out of the ice. Her body was riddled with wounds, especially her abdomen and back, which had been pierced by 4 sharp objects. Patches of black divine blood flowed continuously from her wounds, emitting a foul and poisonous stench, worsening her injuries. Empress Ziwei's icy face was suppressing her anger. In his right hand there was a bloody head. Even the hidden demon beast was no match for Empress Ziwei. It was completely within expectations. Her strength was so great that it was difficult to measure it with cultivation. Puff! Empress Ziwei clenched her fist and crushed the hidden demon beast's head. Heartless Saber Emperor was deeply in awe. He coughed dryly and said, "Empress Ziwei." Empress Ziwei looked over with cold eyes, surrounded by a murderous aura. She said coldly, "Why are you here?" There was an interrogative tone in her words. Heartless Saber Emperor pretended to be calm and said, "With such a huge commotion here, it would be hard for me not to sense it." Empress Ziwei agreed with this statement. Seeing the person in his hand, she said coldly, "Su Yu? Why did you capture him?" In other words, she just needed to take away his altar fragment. "When I came, I saw this brat acting suspiciously. He even launched a sneak attack and eliminated the blood guanine." Heartless Saber Emperor said according to his script. Empress Ziwei's eyes narrowed. "He eliminated the blood guanine? Is that possible?" Heartless Saber Emperor said, "With his cultivation level, Of course it's impossible. But I saw with my own eyes that the two of them were having a good discussion, talking and laughing. Suddenly, this brat succeeded in his sneak attack. Hearing the crux of the matter, Empress Ziwei's expression turned cold. You mean, he was talking and laughing with the blood guanine? Heartless Saber Emperor nodded. Yes. Looks like they had a good relationship before this. Empress Ziwei sized Suyu up and said coldly, So, the one who rescued the blood guanine was you. It wasn't me. I didn't. Suyu hurriedly explained. Heartless Saber Emperor laughed coldly. No need to hide it, I heard it all. It was all your plan. You were the one who lured out the hidden demon beast. The blood guanine was only listening to your commands. Crack, a terrifying cold air assaulted his face. Empress Ziwei glared at Suyu. No wonder. I was wondering why the blood guanine suddenly became so resourceful. It turns out that there was an expert guiding her from behind. Good. Very good. Empress Ziwei said coldly. Heartless Saber Emperor, leave him here and you can go. Heartless Saber Emperor thought to himself. As expected, Empress Ziwei had her guard up against him. Since he dared to plot against you, of course you have to deal with him. Heartless Saber Emperor took out another 6 fragments of the altar and tossed them over along with Suyu. These are the fragments of the altar I found on his body. They're all yours. Receiving the 6 fragments of the altar, Empress Ziwei's expression softened slightly. I'll remember this. She reached out to grab Suyu, who was tossed over. But halfway through, the yin and yang energies suddenly appeared above Suyu's head, and he escaped by teleportation. Heartless Saber Emperor was shocked. I clearly sealed his divine energy. Empress Ziwei did not expect this either. Her beautiful face was filled with coldness as she said coldly, Yin and Yang teleportation? It's all my fault, I didn't completely seal him, Heartless Saber Emperor said in frustration. Empress Ziwei said, It's not your fault. This person has a special technique, and it's hard to guess. Wait here, I'll go catch him. Empress Ziwei rose into the air. Heartless Saber Emperor said, Wait, I'll go too. This person dared to be so disrespectful to you. As the brother of the limitless sword saint, I can't let him escape just like that. Empress Ziwei hesitated for a moment. She weighed the altar fragment in her sleeves and nodded. All right. Follow behind me. The two of them chased after Suyu, one in front and one behind. How could Suyu escape the pursuit of 2 golden overlords by himself? Not long after, Empress Ziwei and Heartless Saber Emperor caught up to Suyu. Empress Ziwei's expression was cold as she stared at him. How does it feel to scheme against someone? The pain from the wounds on her body and the perilous situation in the swamp made Empress Ziwei's hatred unquenchable. Her mind was running through countless ways to torture Suyu. Unexpectedly, Suyu turned his head. There was no nervousness on his face. Instead, he was calm. Chapter 1700. The essence of moving 1,000 caddies with little effort lies in how to borrow strength. The more unexpected the power borrowed, the more miraculous it would be. For example, this external force. Empress Ziwei was startled and immediately became wary. However, he didn't pay attention to his back. A powerful killer move that had been waiting to be unleashed mercilessly erupted from behind Empress Ziwei. Tyrant Saber's 9th move, Heaven-Cleaving Stance. Puff, Empress Ziwei's chest was punctured from the front to the back, and she threw up a mouthful of white divine blood. Her whole body gently shivered, and she turned her head in disbelief. Then, she stared at the emotionless Saber Emperor with incomparably ice-cold eyes. Good. That's great. The two of you are working together seamlessly. The merciless Saber Monarch's face was cold and emotionless as he said, For the sake of my goal, there is no other way. Empress Ziwei shook her head lightly. I don't blame you for plotting against me, but why did you join forces with an outsider? There are no eternal enemies, only eternal interests. The merciless Saber Monarch said lightly, Empress Ziwei, let's stop here. I will compensate you when we return to the outside world. After saying this, he lowered his wrist, and the giant saber slashed down, splitting Empress Ziwei in half. If it was an ordinary person, it would have been a life and death crisis, and the ancient dream altar would have sensed it. However, Empress Ziwei's body had been cleaved in half, but she was still alive. An indistinct death chi spread out from his body, and the two halves of his body quickly turned into ice and started to fuse together. Emotionless Saber Monarch was not surprised at all. He sneered and said, "Immortal body? I've long heard from Big Brother that you've already reached the level of an undying body. However, Big Brother said that this undying body has a fatal flaw, and that is that during the recovery process, there can't be the slightest bit of interference, otherwise all previous efforts will be wasted." He wreaked havoc and swung his giant blade down. There was no doubt that this strike would eliminate Empress Ziwei. The heartless Saber Emperor's face was brimming with a victorious smile. Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like the outcome had been decided, and everything was going according to his calculations. He borrowed power twice, especially the merciless Saber Monarch's power at the end to ambush and eliminate Empress Ziwei, eliminating a great threat. However, just as the blade slashed down, an extremely strange fluctuation suddenly appeared in the surroundings. It was like the fluctuation of the ancient dream altar, but it seemed even stranger and more unfathomable. Bang! Suddenly, a pitch-black giant palm appeared in the sky, blotting out the sun as it slammed down violently. The emotionless Saber Monarch's final saber strike was actually blocked. "Who is it?" The emotionless Saber Emperor was startled, and his saber power suddenly sank. However, the pitch-black giant palm was as solid as the heavens and earth. Not only did the giant saber fail to press down, but it even bounced off. Shwar, the huge pitch-black palm flashed by, and with a clench of its 5 fingers, it grabbed the 2 halves of the icy body on the ground and quickly retreated into the depths of the world. The merciless Saber Monarch was extremely alarmed and furious when he saw this scene. The palm was clearly trying to save Empress Ziwei. If she really was rescued and recovered, even 5 of him wouldn't be a match for Empress Ziwei. Coupled with his betrayal just now, his fate would be extremely miserable when Empress Ziwei returned to settle the score. The merciless Saber Emperor took out an offensive talisman that was filled with the power of the desolation and desolation while carrying a lingering fear and resentment. Without a doubt, the Southern Sea Killer Emperor had personally refined it for him. It was to be used at the most crucial moment. As far as the heartless Saber Emperor was concerned, this was the most dangerous moment. Bang! The power of the desolation and desolation dispersed. There was no powerful aura, no aura that could stir the winds and clouds of the world. There was only a faint trace of power. It was this power that had pierced through the pitch-black giant palm. However, it was only pierced through. The giant palm calmly carried the heavily injured Empress Ziwei away, giving her enough time to recover. At that time, no one in the central region would be able to suppress Empress Ziwei. A trace of mockery reverberated between heaven and earth. It was as if he was the ruler hidden beyond the heavens, toying with them wantonly. He could destroy their efforts with a single thought, and he could look down on them with disdain. Even using his strongest trump card, had not been able to stop Empress Ziwei. The merciless Saber Emperor was furious. "Damned thing, who dares to oppose me?" In his fury, he reached for the broken pieces of the sacrificial altar. There was no other way. Empress Ziwei was about to make a comeback, and he really did not want to face her head-on. A trace of fear welled up in his heart. He would choose to retreat and return to the Southern Sea. Empress Ziwei would not chase him to the Southern Sea for revenge. Hee. Suddenly, the merciless Saber Emperor heard Su Yu's strange laughter. There was coldness, mockery, resentment, and a deep chill. "You're still the same as always, always making a move at the most critical moment, manipulating the situation and putting me in danger." Su Yu smiled coldly, releasing a powerful aura around him. It's been a long time, Tribulation Fairy. The appearance of the Tribulation Fairy was completely within Su Yu's expectations. Even when he would appear, it was all within Su Yu's grasp. Even from countless miles away, the Tribulation Fairy would not let go of any opportunity to kill Su Yu. Now that Su Yu was about to successfully complete his plan and get the chance to face the Tribulation Fairy, would he let go of the chance to kill Su Yu? No way. Therefore, Su Yu was not surprised by his appearance. Humph! In the darkness, there seemed to be a mocking snort. It was as if saying, "What can you do to me even if you know?" Su Yu's sneer deepened, so much so that the merciless Saber Emperor could not help but feel an extreme chill. "Do you think that since I guessed you would appear, I would allow you to succeed?" Su Yu's expression was cold as he said calmly, "Explode." In Empress Ziwei's sleeves, one of the 6 fragments of the sacrificial altar suddenly erupted with an intense, flickering brilliance. Within the brilliance, a picture of mountains and rivers appeared. It was a one-time consumable that heart-chasing ship had exchanged with him. The mountains and rivers in the picture suddenly appeared and exploded with absolute power. Unlike the talisman of the merciless Saber Emperor, the power of this picture was not strong, only at the level of a silver overlord. However, it appeared within the giant palm, on Empress Ziwei's body. The giant palm had no time to resist the explosive force, and Empress Ziwei, who had been split in half, suffered the final, fatal blow. Boom! With a loud bang, the 2 halves of Empress Ziwei's body shattered inch by inch. A crisis of life and death had arrived. "No!" Empress Ziwei, who was recovering, let out an angry roar of disbelief. The ancient dream altar ignored her unwillingness and her anger, and transported her out. Empress Ziwei was eliminated. The pitch-black giant palm returned empty-handed, and a furious roar came from the darkness. Su Yu's lips curled into a murderous smile. "Shout, shout while you still can. When I come before you, perhaps you won't have the chance to be angry anymore." Swish! The merciless Saber Emperor flew over and grabbed all the scattered fragments of the sacrificial altar. Of course, he did not repeat the same mistake. He carefully checked all the fragments of the sacrificial altar, and only after ensuring that there were no more dangerous talismans hidden in them did he put them away in his sleeve. "Ha ha ha ha, I have to admit, your plan was flawless. You actually left an unknown backup plan in the sacrificial altar fragments." The merciless Saber Emperor praised sincerely. Now, it seemed that Su Yu had already predicted that there would be some twists and turns in eliminating Empress Ziwei. As expected, those sacrificial altar fragments would fall into Empress Ziwei's hands. No matter how vigilant Empress Ziwei was, how could she have been aware that there was an absolutely unexpected plan in the sacrificial altar fragments? Without Su Yu's backup plan, the consequences would have been completely out of control. Su Yu said calmly, "You flatter me." The merciless Saber Emperor flew over, his eyes full of admiration. "I have decided to set a precedent for you. My followers' cultivation base has to be at the level of a silver overlord. Although you have not reached that level, I will make an exception and accept you as my follower. You will serve me from now on." He patted Su Yu's shoulder and said, "Become my follower, and you will enjoy the highest treatment in the South Sea. You can have any martial resources, beautiful women, or precious treasures. There will be no doubt that you will become a glazed crystal overlord in the future." He thought that the conditions were very tempting, and threw Su Yu an identity nameplate personally crafted by the South Sea Killer Emperor. "From now on, you will be my 10th follower." Su Yu's expression was indifferent. Follower? The merciless Saber Emperor was in high spirits and exceptionally pleased. He spread his palms and demanded, "As you wished, Empress Ziwei has been eliminated. You have successfully taken your revenge on her, and there is no longer any meaning in staying in the ancient dream altar. Give me the sacrificial altar fragments." He was already commanding Su Yu with the tone of a master. However, Su Yu, the slave, was indifferent. "Do you have something to say?" The merciless Saber Emperor was displeased. Su Yu said, "I want to ask a question." "Speak." "Seeing that you are already my follower," the merciless Saber Emperor said with a wave of his hand. Su Yu said leisurely, "What do you see in me when you accept me as your follower?" "Nonsense. Of course it's because you are good at scheming." Su Yu clasped his hands behind his back and looked at him indifferently. "Since you know that I am good at scheming, why are you so confident that you are not part of my scheme?" When the merciless Saber Emperor heard this, his expression changed drastically. He instinctively distanced himself from Su Yu. At the same time, he shook his sleeves and threw out all the fragments of the Six Paths altar, fearing that he would fall into Su Yu's trap. In this brief encounter, the merciless Saber Emperor was extremely fearful of Su Yu's scheme. "You are scheming against me?" The merciless Saber Emperor clenched his giant sword tightly, feeling extremely uneasy. This was because he couldn't imagine how Su Yu would scheme against him. Su Yu played with the sacrificial altar fragment in his palm and said indifferently, "Your previous aggressiveness is still fresh in my mind. What makes you think that I will sincerely cooperate with you?" The merciless Saber Emperor took a step back and said, "Humph, you're trash to begin with. How is calling you trash considered overbearing?" Su Yu looked up at him and said, "Your biggest problem is that you think too highly of yourself. It was like that in the past, and it is still like that now." He took out the Azura sword and held it in front of him. Seeing this, the merciless Saber Emperor was stunned. He could not help but laugh loudly. "Ha ha ha, so you want to challenge me to a battle? Do you think you can do it?" Su Yu did not speak. He held the Azura sword with both hands, his expression solemn. A majestic demonic figure appeared behind him. He held a giant demonic sword with both hands, his posture exactly the same as Su Yu's. Chapter 1701. The unparalleled demonic shadow followed Su Yu and let out an earth-shattering roar. The gigantic demonic sword and Su Yu's Azura sword slashed down together. That sword strike seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth, and it shook the world. The demonic shadow and Su Yu's shadow fused together in an instant, looking like a demonic master. Boundless sword chi swept through the world with the momentum to destroy all obstacles. Heartless Saber Monarch's complexion changed drastically. "Ah! What swordsmanship is this?" Its terrifying power was comparable to Empress Ziwei's strongest technique, Extreme Ice Feast. The merciless Saber Monarch used his saber technique, but he was like a moth in the wind. He was swept away by the frightening sword and disappeared without a trace. Ding! A fragment of the altar fell to the ground with a crisp sound. Su Yu walked over and bent down to pick up the altar's fragment. He also picked up the other 7 fragments. A faint smile flashed across his face. "I have obtained all 9 fragments of the sacrificial altar. Only Huang Fu Liang is left." Su Yu muttered, his gaze grave. This person was mysterious and unfathomable, and Su Yu was extremely wary of him. Even Empress Ziwei couldn't compare to Huang Fu Liang. Su Yu wasn't confident that he would be able to snatch the altar's fragment from him. However, a tribulation transcender was right in front of him, and no matter what methods he had to use, he had to seize the fragment. The outside world. From afar, the 4 raging flames burning above the ancient dream altar could be seen. One flame was extinguished, but the last one was even more intense than the other 3. The lady from the starry tower comforted Shui Guanyin, who was beside her, and said, "Don't worry, Su Yu, or rather, what Shui Yu said was not wrong. Don't trust people too much." The blood Guanyin rubbed her sore nose. Her eyes were red as she pouted unwillingly. "I can't accept this. I trusted him so much. How could he stab me in the back? I was going to give him the altar fragment, but he still chose to betray me." Regarding this matter, the knot in Shui Guanyin's heart was difficult to calm. The stellar pavilion's female pavilion venerable side. The blood Guanine had too little experience, and her temperament was not firm enough. It was hard to calm down after being betrayed. While they were talking, another flame was suddenly extinguished. That slightly taller flame, on the other hand, grew even bigger. 3 spirit kings have been born. Who was eliminated again? The stellar pavilion's female pavilion venerable exclaimed in admiration. The first to be eliminated was the star pavilion's blood Guanine. To be honest, it was very unexpected for her to be the first to be eliminated with her strength. Who knew that the second person would be eliminated? How could he be so fast? Someone exclaimed in surprise. This is unbelievable. In the past 5 spirits contest, there was always a long time before there was an elimination. 2 in a row, this is truly unprecedented. Look, it's that flame again. It's increased by another 10%, meaning that he eliminated 2 people in a row. Even a proud daughter of heaven like Shui Guanine could be eliminated. There's only one person who could do it, right? Everyone turned to look at the Snow Dragon Emperor. There was also a hint of arrogance on the latter's face. Among all the prodigies, Empress Ziwei was the only one who could suppress Shui Guanine. Just like her name, Empress, the people of her generation in the sea of constellations all paled in comparison to her dazzling radiance. The limitless Sword Saint's eyes were filled with pride. You are indeed my woman. Take a guess, who was eliminated? I think it's Huang Fuliang? That person is a loner and mysterious. If Empress Ziwei met him, she would not let him go. Why do I feel like it's that Su Yu who entered by luck? A mere cave world senior actually competed with several top golden overlords. If he is not eliminated, there is no justice in this world. That's right. Even my successor, the Silver Overlord, was eliminated. He's just a lucky guy. He managed to survive until now. Swish, the ripples brought 2 pieces of ice down. The ice fused into a body of ice. When the cold air dissipated, an incomparably beautiful, cold, and arrogant figure was revealed. Her face was still as cold as ice, but the difference was that her eyes were bursting with a shocking murderous aura. Su, you. I will never forgive you. The second to be eliminated was actually the strongest person. The orderly scene just a moment ago erupted in a blink of an eye. Empress Ziwei has been eliminated? No one could believe their eyes. The one who should be eliminated the most was not eliminated, but the one who should not be eliminated the least was eliminated. She was only half an hour away from being eliminated by Shui Guanine. Everyone thought that the one who eliminated Shui Guanine was Empress Ziwei. But now, even she was eliminated. The strangest thing was that both of them were eliminated by the same person. Ziwei Yu. The Wuji Sword Saint flew over in disbelief and said in shock. He did not believe that Empress Ziwei would be eliminated. Empress Ziwei glared at him. Ask your good brother. The merciless Saber Emperor? What did he do to you? The Wuji Sword Saint's face darkened. Humph! Empress Ziwei flung her hand and left angrily. When she passed by Shui Guanine, she stopped and said coldly, Shui Guanine, you really found an expert. Shui Guanine was still in a daze. She did not believe that someone could eliminate her. It was not until Empress Ziwei said this that Shui Guanine suddenly thought of someone. Su Yu. She clearly remembered that Su Yu said that he did not plot against Empress Ziwei just to make her suffer a little. Instead, he wanted to eliminate her. And in the end, he did it. The female cabinet master frowned and asked Shui Guanine, what does she mean by expert? Shui Guanine was at a loss. No one. She had a question. How did Su Yu do it? Eliminating Empress Ziwei was the most impossible thing to do. But, as Su Yu said, there was nothing impossible in this world. Swish, not long after. The raging flames above the altar changed again. One flame was extinguished, and the other continued to soar. Oh my God! The 4 spirit kings have been born. No way, He eliminated another person? Who is that person? He eliminated Shui Guanyin and Empress Ziwei one after another? Could it be the mysterious Huang Fu Liang? It's most likely him. I didn't expect this person to hide so deeply. His strength is too terrifying. The crowd was discussing. Waves swept through the area and a screaming figure descended. The merciless Saber Emperor. He's been eliminated too. It really was Huang Fu Liang. The 3 most promising candidates for the 5 Spirit Kings have all been eliminated. This year's Ancient Dream Altar is a first. Not only did 5 people successfully enter the tower, but a shocking dark horse also appeared. As the crowd discussed, Empress Ziwei, who had just turned around, returned angrily. She leaped in front of the merciless Saber Emperor, and could not help but laugh coldly. Ha ha, let me guess, you fell for his trap too? The merciless Saber Emperor rubbed his painful wound, too guilty to look at Empress Ziwei in the eyes. I was deceived by him, that's why I did that. Sister-in-law Ziwei, if you want to blame someone, blame him. It really has nothing to do with me. Empress Ziwei grabbed his collar and laughed angrily. You idiot! I'm guessing he must have used flowery words to get you to cooperate with him to get rid of me. In the end, you only found out later that he had a trick up his sleeve to eliminate you too? The merciless Saber Emperor's forehead was covered in cold sweat. I did not. Empress Ziwei's cold smile deepened. The merciless Saber Emperor's expression told her that she had guessed correctly. In order to deal with her, Su Yu had consecutively set up 3 traps, especially the last one hidden in the altar shard. She could not have imagined it even in her dreams. How could such a calculative person let a fool like the merciless Saber Emperor go? Humph! Empress Ziwei threw him to the ground and angrily turned to leave, returning to the Snow Dragon Divine Master. She knelt on the ground. I am useless, Master, please punish me. The Snow Dragon Divine Master's expression was indifferent, as if he was not affected by his successor's defeat. Victory and defeat are common in battles. There is no need to blame yourself. Go and train. Yes. The Wuji Sword Saint's eyes were cold. He walked forward and kicked the merciless Saber Emperor to the ground. You bastard! How dare you collude with outsiders to plot against Ziwei? The merciless Saber Emperor begged for mercy. Big brother, I was wrong. I will never do it again. His reply was a beating from the Wuji Sword Saint. Trash. You have ruined Ziwei's bright future. With her potential, she should have entered the 2nd level without a doubt and obtained the legendary path Master Buddha's relic. But she had been destroyed by her brother's stupidity. How could he not be angry? After a round of beating, the merciless Saber Emperor was beaten black and blue before he stopped. The merciless Saber Emperor was humiliated. He covered his face and squeezed out of the crowd. Coincidentally, he passed by Shui Guanyin. He could not help but stop in his tracks, revealing a hateful expression. Good. What a good Shui Guanyin. The outside world only thinks you are innocent. Who would have thought that you are also a scheming person? You actually cooperated with Su Yu to put on such a realistic show of betrayal, tricking me. I, the merciless Saber Emperor, will remember this. Shui Guanyin was stunned, her heart filled with confusion. What did the elimination of Empress Ziwei and the merciless Saber Emperor have to do with her? Why did they all treat her as an enemy? Until the words of the merciless Saber Emperor enlightened Shui Guanyin. Wait, a show of betrayal. That was not an act. Su Yu really betrayed her, giving her a sword. Thinking of this, Shui Guanyin froze. Combining the words of Empress Ziwei, she suddenly understood. Su Yu's betrayal was an act for the merciless Saber Emperor. Without this sword of betrayal, would the merciless Saber Emperor treat Su Yu as one of them? Understanding this, the knot in Shui Guanyin's heart disappeared. She could not help but laugh foolishly. No wonder he said he wanted to borrow my altar fragment. So this was his intention? She was delighted, but also a little resentful. But this guy is still despicable. He did not discuss this with me in advance, causing me to feel sad for nothing. Despicable guy. The outside world was in an uproar. Inside the altar, Suyu was quietly walking alone in the forest. Wherever he passed, he deliberately left behind his scent. He wanted Huang Fu Liang to find him and have a final battle with him. No matter how well Huang Fu Liang hid himself, no matter how strong his abilities were, there was only one way to win this battle. If he lost, everything would be over. 3 days later, Suyu walked in the desert. He did not find any trace of Huang Fu Liang. After leaving the loft, it was as if he had evaporated into thin air. Until today, at this moment. I heard you were looking for me? Huang Fu Liang's gentle voice came from behind him without warning. Looking back, he was still as harmless and gentle as ever. But he was still as elusive as ever. Suyu had no idea when he was behind him or how long he had been there. Suyu felt an inexplicable pressure in his heart. There was a strong feeling of unease in the depths of his soul. Without a battle, he instinctively felt fear. What cultivation level was he at? Who was he? Chapter 1702. What kind of cultivation could make Suyu feel so uneasy? Suppressing his emotions, Suyu calmly turned around and stared at him. Only you and I are left. Huang Fu Liang crossed his hands behind his head and smiled. So you came to me to take the altar fragment? That's right, Suyu calmly said. He solemnly took out the Azura sword and stabbed it into the ground, making a loud, powerful sound. The blood-red Shura sect sword reflected a piercingly cold light. A deep fighting spirit shot out from Suyu's eyes, and it was exceptionally scorching. Aren't you going to use your scheming skills? Huang Fu Liang chuckled as he looked around. To be honest, I was worried that you would set up some kind of trap when I came. It seemed like he had witnessed everything that had happened between Suyu and Empress Ziwei. The scary thing was that Suyu, Empress Ziwei, Shui Guanyin, and the merciless Saber Emperor had not sensed his presence. Taking a deep breath, Suyu held the Azura sword and pointed it at him. I don't want to scheme against you. Why? Huang Fu Liang asked. Suyu calmly said, This is a form of respect for you. In the end, the calculation was unfair. Suyu liked Huang Fu Liang very much. He did not kill indiscriminately, nor was he arrogant. He could distinguish right from wrong, and he could kill the evil by Shuejian without fear. Suyu only wanted a fair fight with him. Huang Fu Liang laughed. Not bad, I like you too. He put down his hands, signaling Suyu to be on guard and ready to strike. However, he did not strike. Instead, he took out the altar fragment from his sleeves and casually threw it to Suyu. Suyu was stunned. What do you mean? Huang Fu Liang's body was surrounded by powerful waves that slowly swept him out. My intention is not in the attic. I have gotten what I wanted in 3 days. I have come today to give you the altar fragment. Huang Fu Liang smiled. Suyu grabbed the altar fragment and stared at him. Thank you. Huang Fu Liang looked at the second level of the attic. I don't know why you insist on going to the second level, but don't be careless. That place is extraordinary. Without further explanation, Huang Fu Liang was swept out of the ancient dream altar. The outside world. There was an uproar. Most people were shocked when they saw Huang Fu Liang being teleported out. He was also eliminated? Who on earth is that cavern world venerable Suyu? How did he defeat so many prodigies in a row? Unbelievable! Who is he? Where did he come from? The biggest dark horse was not Huang Fu Liang, but Suyu. The only ones who remained calm were Empress Ziwei and the heartless Saber Monarch. One of them had experienced Suyu's terrifying scheming ability. The other one had experienced Suyu's profound swordsmanship. They were not too surprised by Suyu's victory. A hint of surprise appeared in the female pavilion venerable's eyes. The birth of the 5 spirit kings. This is the first time since the appearance of the ancient dream altar. This meant that someone was finally able to enter the second level and obtain the Dailord's Buddhist Sarira that was still rumored to exist. With this item, the lowest achievement would be to become the overlord of the heavens and earth. The highest possibility would be to reach the realm of the faceless Buddha and become the Tao Lord of Buddhism. She could sense that in the next few thousand years, the sea of constellations would undergo a huge change. All of this was because of the sole existence of the intense flame. In the palace, under the shadow, the Snow Dragon Emperor stood up. He looked at the heroic flame and sighed deeply. 30,000 years, it's been too long. The shadow covered his face, but it could not hide his eyes, which were glowing red. In the altar, Suyu had obtained the 10 fragments of the altar and placed them in front of him. The 10 fragments of the altar were reunited, each emitting a faint green light. Under the guidance of the green light, the fragments slowly squirmed, pieced together, and turned into a small altar. At first glance, Suyu felt a sense of familiarity. If he remembered correctly, under the Tai Chi pattern, there was a small altar pattern at the bottom of the cold pool. The small altar in front of him looked exactly like the pattern depicted. The small altar was born. The entire ancient dream altar, the 5 outer regions, and the central region all trembled. Creak! A loud sound came from the depths of the ground and penetrated the ancient dream altar. From the outside, the 5 outer regions of the ancient dream altar moved at the same time and changed their positions around the central region in a special order. During the process, there were bursts of deafening noises. The whole process lasted for a long time. In the end, the ancient dream altar had changed beyond recognition and became a Buddhist artifact in the shape of an alms bowl. The alms bowl was inverted, and the central region was the bottom of the alms bowl. The strange scene surprised everyone present. Why did the ancient dream altar become a Buddhist artifact? What does this mean? Why did the ancient dream altar change its form? All sorts of questions were raging in the arena. In the direction of the Star Pavilion, Mu Tsanghai's expression was solemn as he whispered softly, "What will come will come." Inside the altar, Suyu looked at the dramatic changes in front of him with a calm expression. The towering ancient trees within 100 million perimeter had all sunk into the ground. What replaced them was the surface of a golden lake. The lake water exuded a powerful Buddhist energy. The pavilion was like an otherworldly place, floating in the middle of the golden lake, receiving the illumination of many Buddhist energies. Under the illumination, the pavilion was covered with a layer of golden brilliance. It was holy and solemn, like a monk sitting cross-legged. In a trance, Suyu seemed to see a Buddha statue with its back to the common people. As Suyu wished, a staircase formed by the condensation of Buddhist energy slowly descended from the second floor of the pavilion. The tightly shut doors and windows were also slowly opened. A breath of calamity slowly fluctuated in all directions. Calamity Fairy. Suyu's eyes were filled with murderous intent. From the Zhenlong continent to the world of Jiuzhou, and then to the wisest galaxy. The shadow of the Calamity Fairy was always faintly discernible. Every time it appeared, it was to kill Suyu. At that time, Suyu was as weak as a speck of dust. Every time, he could only look up at the sky in anger, but there was nothing he could do. To him, the Calamity Fairy was high and mighty, an existence similar to the will of the world. In the blink of an eye, decades had passed. Back then, the speck of dust that was wantonly tortured and killed by the Calamity Fairy had walked step by step to where he was today. Along the way, Suyu had relied on great perseverance and wisdom to overcome dangers and obstacles again and again to finally reach where he was today. Only Suyu himself knew how much bitterness and frustration he had experienced. He clenched his fists, and the surging power and powerful feeling reverberated in his body. Calamity Fairy, the speck of dust that you insisted on wiping out back then, is here, Suyu said and stepped onto the surface of the golden lake. The surface of the lake reflected Su Yu's figure, as well as everything about his past. Every scene was like passing clouds and smoke. Boom! In the depths of the attic, a powerful calamity echoed. With a thunderbolt in the clear sky, dark clouds appeared above Su Yu's head. The thunder dragon in the clouds roared, and a terrible calamity descended. A vortex appeared in the middle of the dark clouds, and a black feather floated down from it. The feather was full of terrible power. However, that was only relative to the dust fairy. Tribulation of Thunder Feather. When Su Yu was still a fairy, the divine tribulation he had passed was also the first time Su Yu had encountered a tribulation from a calamity fairy. At that time, he died twice, exhausted all the resources in his body, and was forced to open the Tao Tai's eyes to barely survive. However, at this moment, Su Yu smiled lightly and waved his sleeves. The lightning feathers that filled the sky dispersed like clouds and smoke. Even the dark clouds had been completely dispersed. The tribulation of Thunder Feather had just passed. The dark clouds in the sky gathered again, and a huge figure descended. His waist was wrapped in a thick chain, and his body was huge like a pillar supporting the sky. It was the giant of the bitter sea. Su Yu's nightmares in the past pushed him to death twice. Especially the first time, when he was chased by the giant of the bitter sea, Su Yu escaped from the bitter sea with difficulty. The two experiences were still fresh in Su Yu's mind. However, facing this person again, Su Yu looked indifferent and pointed a finger at him. The giant of the bitter sea turned into smoke and disappeared. With one finger, Su Yu killed the overlord of the Star River. Su Yu calmly looked at the 9-jade spiritual pearl on his arm. Su Yu stared at the 9-jade spiritual pearl on his arm, as if he saw Xia Jingyu. Jingyu, is this the tribulation that you sacrificed your eyes and heart for me to resolve? Su Yu said in a low tone. His face was full of deep remorse and guilt. But now, it seemed that the few times he had faced certain death back then, he was actually so vulnerable. At that time, he was so weak and sad. He needed to rely on the silent sacrifice of his beloved woman to resolve the tribulation. At that time, Xia Jingyu must have been in the most pain and loneliness, and she needed to be protected the most. At that time, she must have wanted Su Yu to be by her side the most, right? However, he was worried about his own life and how to survive. To let Xia Jingyu die alone in pain, in loneliness, and in the darkness of losing her eyes? Step by step, alone? Even so, she had no regret. She had no hatred, no resentment, no remorse. Her last words were just a gentle reminder to Su Yu to live well, and not to take revenge for her. She wished that he and Qin Xian'er could grow old together. What about her? If she gave everything, who would help her? What did she get? All she got was a lonely old man and a quiet death. All she got was a wisp of her hair to bless her beloved man and another woman forever. Su Yu's chest was filled with sorrow. Everything should come to an end. 2 lines of tears were left on Su Yu's cheeks. Jingyu, wait for me. Su Yu closed his eyes and opened them again. His sorrow was gone, and what was left was his indomitable sharpness. Even if the Path Master was waiting for him, he had no intention of retreating. Thump! Su Yu took 1 step up the stairs and 2 steps into the pavilion. Against the powerful disastrous will, he stepped into the 2nd floor of the pavilion. What he saw was an ancient stone coffin. On the stone coffin, a man dressed in ancient clothes was sitting cross-legged, his back facing Su Yu. His back was slender and slender. His silver-white long hair fluttered gently. His plain robe added to his elegance. But even from his back, the aura he gave off was full of violence, arrogance, destruction, and killing. Looking at him was like looking at an endless mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Tap, tap, Su Yu stepped inside, his footsteps echoing clearly in the pavilion. The man who was sitting cross-legged slowly stood up and stood on the ancient stone coffin, letting out a voice that was both male and female. Time flies. The ant from back then has grown to the point of standing in front of me. He slowly turned around, revealing an extraordinarily handsome face. But that face was exactly the same as Su Yu's. Even the look in his eyes was the same. Chapter 1703. The only difference was that there were 3 white stars orbiting each of his pupils. The stars rotated like a whirlpool. The strong catastrophe came from the whirlpool. Looking at the person in front of him, who looked exactly like himself, Su Yu's heart was surprisingly calm, and he was not surprised at all. He was fully prepared, and even if the Tribulation Fairy was Yun Yazi, he would not be surprised. You are not surprised why I look exactly like you. The Tribulation Fairy's mouth evoked a light smile. Su Yu shook his head and slowly pulled out the Azura sword. No matter what you look like, you can't change my killing intent, just like how you tried to kill me in the past. The Tribulation Fairy's face was full of sarcasm. He looked at Su Yu as if he was looking at an overconfident ant. You may not be qualified to kill me. The Tribulation Fairy clenched his hand, and a giant sword that was no different from the Azura sword appeared in his palm. What you have, I have. What you don't have, I have. The Tribulation Fairy said mysteriously, waving the Azura sword in his palm. Demon Gate Immeasurable. It was a familiar sword technique, but it was being performed by someone other than himself. Su Yu held the Azura sword, and a bright light burst out in his palm. Demon Gate Immeasurable. The 2 identical sword techniques collided in the attic. The same power, the same cultivation, came from 2 exactly the same people. The sword energy was annihilated, and the remaining shock wave rolled back, scattering Su Yu's silver hair. The 4th technique, Demon Master World. Su Yu's sword fell, and he used the 2nd technique. This technique was even more powerful, and it could destroy the Golden Overlord. Demon Master World. However, what he knew, the Tribulation Fairy also knew. The confrontation of the 2 majestic demonic shadows erupted with terrible power. Su Yu and the Tribulation Fairy were not spared. The Tribulation Fairy had an obvious sword wound on his chest. Su Yu, in addition to his shoulder, also had a sword wound on his chest. I said that what you have, I have. What you don't have, I have. The Tribulation Fairy laughed, and his eyes narrowed as he shouted, The 5th technique, 10,000 demons unite. With a swing of the sword, tens of thousands of cracks were cut straight to the demon world. Demonic shadows descended one after another and surrounded the Tribulation Transcender, worshipping him as if they were worshipping him. Then, as if obeying the command of the Demon Lord, the 10,000 demonic shadows each turned into a pitch-black demonic sword and slashed at Su Yu in unison. Every single one of them was like a silver overlord. With 10,000 of them, even a gold overlord would die without a doubt. Why did he succeed when Su Yu didn't? The corners of the Tribulation Transcender's mouth curled into a cruel sneer. It's over. Su Yu's eyes were calm. He touched the 9-jade spiritual pearl with his finger and said, Shenga. Whoosh, a young girl with an unusually bright face appeared. Without another word, she clasped her hands together. A ghost Buddhist annihilation power rose from his palms. Destroy! Xing Ji's eyes widened, and the annihilation power in her palm dispersed. Chi chi chi! The countless demon swords were all melted into nothingness when they encountered the power of annihilation. The remaining power of annihilation slowly dissipated into the air. Su Yu had not rashly used Xing Ji's power of annihilation in all the dangers he had encountered along the way, all for this moment. The Tribulation Transcender looked slightly surprised, and then said lightly, The Ghost Buddhist annihilation power is not bad, its power is passable, but it ends here. 9 Suns Sword Formation. The Tribulation Transcender raised his 5 fingers, and 9 silver heavenly orchid silver bamboo swords flew out of his sleeves, surrounding Su Yu and Xing Go. It was the same sword formation, but the difference was that the power of the Tribulation Transcender's cultivation was much more terrifying. Xing Ji's lips curled into a sneer, and she suddenly said, Annihilation Sword. The power of annihilation that should have dissipated into the air condensed into a sword again, piercing the Tribulation Transcender's left chest at close range. Poof, two dull sounds came at the same time. One was the chest of the Tribulation Transcender being pierced. The other was the left chest of Su Yu being severely injured. Xinggu was shocked. She looked at the Tribulation Transcender, and then at Su Yu. The injuries on their left chests were exactly the same. She was clearly attacking the Tribulation Transcender, so why did Su Yu have the same injury? Ha ha ha, have you finally realized it? The Tribulation Transcender laughed mockingly. Hurting me is the same as hurting yourself. But on the other hand, I'm fine even if I hurt you. In other words, he could only kill Su Yu, but Su Yu couldn't even hurt him. Xinggu was shocked. What kind of strange divine technique did you use? How did this happen? The Tribulation Transcender laughed loudly. I'll tell you when you die. Close. The Nine Suns sword formation quickly closed up, strangling Xinggu and Su Yu who were trapped within it. The powerful sword energy swirled around, brushing past Su Yu's body, leaving behind streaks of blood. The Tribulation Transcender was unscathed, watching Su Yu die tragically with a mocking expression. Aunt, I admit that you have grown, but in front of me, you are still the same as you were back then. Weak, lowly, lamentable, and pitiful. You have to rely on a woman to sacrifice herself to survive. 20 years have passed, but you are still the same you from back then. You haven't changed at all. The Tribulation Transcender stared at Su Yu, his eyes full of contempt. How can you still live in this world? Why don't you let me take care of Jingyu for you? As he spoke, his left eye flashed with a wine-red light, which enveloped the 9 jade spiritual pearl. A beautiful young girl was pulled out by the power of space, and she teleported to his side. Although the young girl was less than 10 years old, she was quiet and beautiful. She was little Jingyu. Little Jingyu looked at the Tribulation Transcender curiously and asked, Uncle, who are you? Why do you look like Uncle Su Yu? The Tribulation Transcender smiled and said, I am Su Yu. He took out a pitch-black heavenly book from his sleeve and shook it. Do you still remember it? You gave it to me in the past. Little Jingyu didn't have this memory, so she frowned. Did I give it to you? The Tribulation Transcender extended his index finger and touched the space between little Jingyu's eyebrows. In her body, the 4 invisible black lines had mostly disappeared. The lines of fate that were left in Xia Jingyu's body. They were born because of the calamity, and they would also disappear because of it. Only the Tribulation Transcender himself could resolve them. Once they were resolved, Xia Jingyu's resurrection would be completed, and she would return to the moment before her death. As the remnants of the calamity disappeared, as expected, little Jingyu's body started to grow. From a young girl, she became a 16-year-old girl. She was just as beautiful as when they first met, like a fairy from a painting. She had finally returned. She finally had Su Yu's memory, although it wasn't complete. However, at that time, she already had an unforgettable memory of Su Yu. Brother Su Yu. Xia Jingyu blurted out as she stared at the Tribulation Transcender in front of her. She would always remember that look in his eyes. The Tribulation Transcender smiled gently and said, Jingyu, it's me. Brother Su Yu. It's really you. Why do I feel like I've experienced countless years? Also, why do I feel like I'm missing a lot? Xia Jingyu was confused. She looked at the Tribulation Transcender and treated him as Su Yu. Her beautiful eyes lit up with shyness and longing. At that time, Xia Jingyu hadn't shown her feelings for Su Yu. The Tribulation Transcender said, Jingyu, don't you remember that you wanted to marry me? I love you, just like you love me. A strange fluctuation came from the Tribulation Transcender's eyes and entered Xia Jingyu's soul. Her memory had been tampered with. Xia Jingyu's face was flushed. She lowered her head shyly and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, Wherever Brother Su Yu goes, Jingyu will follow you. I won't regret it in this lifetime. The Tribulation Transcender looked at Xia Jingyu's beautiful face with greed in his eyes. It seemed like he couldn't help but want to occupy this unique beauty as soon as possible. He raised his eyes and stared at Su Yu, who was in the sword formation, with a cold smile. He said, Jingyu, I have an enemy there. As long as you get rid of him, you and I can be together forever. Xia Jingyu looked back. Her memory had been tampered with. What she saw was the reflection of a stranger. Brother Su Yu, your enemy is my enemy. Xia Jingyu's expression was firm. She stood by Su Yu's side with determination, just like before. However, she was now standing by another man's side. Jingyu, can you kill him for me? The Tribulation Transcender asked. Xia Jingyu nodded without hesitation. Sure. She took the Azura sword from the Tribulation Transcender's hand, passed through the sword formation, and came in front of Su Yu. She said calmly, although I don't know who you are, for Brother Su Yu, I can make anyone my enemy. She raised the Azura sword and stabbed it at Su Yu, who was surrounded by the sword formation and unable to resist. She said calmly, I'm the one who killed you. If you want to hate someone, hate me. It has nothing to do with Brother Su Yu. The cold blade pierced into Su Yu's body and the depths of his soul. Fate had played a joke on him. He had saved Xia Jingyu, but she had given him death. Was it sad or ridiculous? Ha ha ha! At the brink of death, the Tribulation Transcender's voice rang in Su Yu's ears. Su Yu, I told you, I have what you don't have. I have the key to resurrecting your beloved woman. Drip. Su Yu's blood flowed down the Azura sword and dripped onto the ground. Xia Jingyu's face was calm and emotionless. How does it feel to die in the hands of the person you love? The Tribulation Transcender's words mercilessly attacked Su Yu's last bit of rationality. Go in peace. I will enjoy her for you. It must feel wonderful to hold her in my arms. Su Yu closed his eyes as if he had lost his last chance of survival. Xia Jingyu drew out the Azura sword and turned around. She sighed softly. I'm sorry. In the end, Su Yu failed to defeat the Tribulation Transcender. Instead, he lost the woman he treasured the most. The world was desolate, and silent sobs lingered in his ears. There was only Xingguo, who was hugging Su Yu in grief and indignation. There was only the Tribulation Transcender, who was sneering coldly. There was only that blurry figure. Everything should come to an end here. However, at that moment, Su Yu opened his eyes. A law that he had prepared appeared in his palm. He gently struck it out. Law seal. A chain flew out and wrapped around Xia Jingyu's body. The other end of the chain was held in Su Yu's hand. He gently pulled, and Xia Jingyu fell back into Su Yu's arms. Jingyu, you're back. Su Yu stared at the beauty in his arms. There was divine blood at the corner of his mouth. Xia Jingyu's whole body trembled. What she saw was a complete stranger. But why was it that those eyes and those plain and unadorned words were like a needle that pierced into the deepest depths of her heart, causing her to feel pain and sorrow? A tear rolled down her cheek uncontrollably. She murmured to herself, Why do I feel sad and happy? Su Yu squeezed out a smile. He raised his head and looked at the Tribulation Transcender. Thank you for resolving the thread of fate. The one who started the trouble must end it. However, what if he didn't understand? The Tribulation Transcender was startled. He squinted and said, You schemed against me. You wanted me to help you resolve the fate left in Xia Jingyu's body? Chapter 1704. Impossible. The Tribulation Transcender shook his head. What makes you think that I will definitely untie the thread of fate left behind by Xia Jingyu? Why wouldn't I kill you first, then toy with her? Besides, you can't even protect yourself, and you still have the time to scheme against me? Su Yu stood up, wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth, and said, The first question is because of my understanding of you. Arrogant, toying with others in the palm of his hand. You won't kill me easily? Instead, I wanted to play with her as much as I wanted before I died. And my greatest weakness was naturally Xiaojingyu. After trapping me, how will you torture me? Only Xiaojingyu knows. And to achieve your goal of torturing me, the only way is for Xiaojingyu to recover. Therefore, you must undo the remaining threads of fate in Xiaojingyu's body. Hearing this, the Tribulation Transcender's face was full of anger. He could imitate everything about Su Yu, but he couldn't imitate Su Yu's ability to scheme. What about the second question? You can't even protect yourself, so why would you plot against me? I don't believe it. Su Yu chuckled, his smile filled with mockery. If it weren't for the fact that I can't even protect myself, would you have let down your guard and arrogantly toyed with me? The complexion of the Tribulation Transcender finally changed, and he quickly clenched his fist. 9 suns sword formation. 9 heavenly orchid silver bamboo swords, like brilliant silver light, suddenly pierced forward. Including Xiaojingyu and Shunga, they would kill them all at once. I don't believe you can defeat me. Under the premise that I can kill you 10,000 times and you can't hurt me, what can you do to me? Su Yu had a calm look on his face as he calmly said, "What a childish trick, yet you think you're so clever. Turns out that your great enemy of the past is actually so weak." He raised the Shura sect sword. He did not resist, nor did he counterattack. Instead, he slashed at his vitals. The game is over, Tribulation Transcender. Next, it's my turn. Pucci. Su Yu had killed himself with a sword strike, which had destroyed his own life force. He was now dead. Finally, the Tribulation Transcender level changed. With Su Yu's death, the powerful catastrophe will on the surface of the Calamity Fairy's body receded like a tide. Su Yu's body was distorted. That godlike appearance, figure, and so on all changed, revealing a white-faced youth with an arrogant expression. His appearance was ordinary and his cultivation was very ordinary as well. He was only a silver overlord. Everything had changed, except for the 3 silver stars in his eyes. His eyes were filled with surprise. He actually knows how to break the natal ordeal? But what a joke, he's already dead, so what if his life tribulation is broken? It turned out that, from the beginning to the end, this was the disaster that the Tribulation Fairy had imposed on Su Yu. As a result, Su Yu ended up facing someone who was exactly the same as him, who possessed everything he had, and who even surpassed him. If one didn't have a way to resolve this tribulation, it would be impossible to pass it. Su Yu was the only one who had not only realized that this was an ordeal, but he had also used his death to overcome it. As the Calamity Fairy was laughing coldly, an emerald flying dragon suddenly flew out of Su Yu's corpse and circled around his body. Shortly after, Su Yu's lost vitality was restored. He opened his eyes and a smile that wasn't a smile filled his eyes. Why? Is it strange? Su Yu stared at the shocked Tribulation Fairy and said calmly, "Don't tell me you've forgotten that I have the heaven-defying ability to resurrect the dead?" In the past, thanks to him, Su Yu had been resurrected twice in the Red Blood Palace and almost died. The Calamity Fairy's face was gloomy. He had almost forgotten that Su Yu was a heaven-defying existence with a heaven-defying divine technique. After handing Xiaojingyu over to Xinggu, Su Yu's face was covered with layers of frost. He took a step forward and approached the Calamity Fairy. He said calmly, "Let me see how powerful you are. The battle just now was just a warm-up. Now it was time for the real battle. Don't come over." The Calamity Fairy pulled out a strand of hair, which was burned on the spot. Sacrifice, tribulation of the heavenly silkworm. All of a sudden, countless silk threads cut through Su Yu's body from inside out, from his soul to his body. Nothing was left unscathed. Su Yu flicked his fingers, and a strong dragon power surged out of his body, shattering the tribulation power. Puff! The tribulation was broken, and the Calamity Fairy fell back, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Once again, he spat out a mouthful of blood. sacrifice, blood tribulation. Suddenly, the blood in Su Yu's body surged uncontrollably, wanting to rush out of his body and cause Su Yu's body to explode. Su Yu waved his robe, and the powerful divine power suppressed the blood in his body. The remnant tribulation power was easily destroyed. The Calamity Fairy spat out another mouthful of blood. In anger, he took out his teeth, skin, and even finger bones, and sacrificed them 3 times. However, those tribulations could not hurt Su Yu at all. Sacrifice, dark tribulation! The Calamity Fairy shouted and dug out his eyeballs. However, before he could launch the tribulation, he was nailed to the ground by Su Yu's sword. The Calamity Fairy's body twitched, and he wanted to resist. Space vortex! Su Yu pointed with his fingertips. The power of space appeared around the Calamity Fairy, imprisoning him. A trace of panic appeared on the Calamity Fairy's face. "You can't even withstand a single blow," Su Yu said indifferently. As the female corpse said, the strength of a Calamity Fairy lay in the fact that he could control the tribulations of heaven and earth. The strength of his original body was ordinary. Apart from the tribulations, the Calamity Fairy was inferior to ordinary people. There is still a part of Xia Jingyu's fate that has not been removed. If you want to kill me, you have to consider the consequences first. Xia Jingyu had only been restored to the age of 16, and there were still 10 years of memories that were blank. Su Yu's eyes were cold. No need. It's good that she doesn't have those 10 years of memories. During those years, she has borne too much pain, loneliness, and hurt. Let me give her 10 years of memories, memories that will no longer be lonely and afraid. The Calamity Fairy's face changed dramatically, and he said, "I want to make a deal with you. I know many secrets of heaven and earth, as long as you." "Enough!" Su Yu's eyes became colder. "Everything you have done to Xia Jingyu, and everything you have done to me, there is no room for negotiation. Su Yu, we Calamity Fairies are not to be trifled with. If you dare to kill me, you will be doomed eternally." The Calamity Fairy threatened. Su Yu sneered. "Doomed eternally? Thanks to you, I have died several times, and Xia Jingyu has also died because of you. Isn't that doomed eternally?" Closing his eyes, Su Yu condensed a dark palm print in his palm, and slapped it on the top of the Calamity Fairy's head. "It's over. Calamity Fairy." The terrible power of death poured into his body, and wherever it passed, his body turned into black ashes. The incomparable pain caused the Calamity Fairy to scream at the sky. His voice was mournful and tragic. There was nothing more painful than watching yourself die bit by bit. Su Yu did not have the slightest sympathy. Little by little, he turned him into ashes. When there were only 3 stars left, the Calamity Fairy cursed with extreme resentment. "Su Yu, you will not have a good end. From the moment you and Xia Jingyu were married, you were destined to die a horrible death." Su Yu looked indifferent. He never knew why the Calamity Fairy targeted him and wanted to kill him at any time. It turned out to be Xia Jingyu. It was unexpected, but it was reasonable. "You will die first." Su Yu pressed down with his palm, and the last bit of the enormous power of death destroyed his head. "Ah! I will not accept this!" The Calamity Fairy roared. "I want you and all of you to die with me. Final sacrifice, corpse calamity." The 3 stars in the Calamity Fairy's eyes suddenly exploded. The infinite power of the Calamity swept out. Su Yu had experienced his calamity just now, and it was not powerful at all. Except for the original calamity of life, the other calamities could not harm Su Yu. However, this Tao ordeal made Su Yu shudder with fear. The will of the calamity dissipated, and there were no drastic changes in the surroundings. Creak, creak, until a strange and creepy sound rang through the silent attic. Su Yu looked in the direction of the sound, and his pupils shrank. It was the sarcophagus. Creak, it was the sound of sharp claws scratching the sarcophagus. It was getting sharper and sharper. Su Yu's breathing was rapid. He glanced into the sarcophagus with his transparent eye and saw a huge corpse with 3 feet of white hair scratching the lid of the sarcophagus. The inside of the sarcophagus was engraved with a Buddhist imprint, and it emitted a strong Buddhist power that enveloped the white-haired corpse. The white-haired corpse was under the control of the Buddhist power, and if he moved a little, he would be burned by the Buddhist power. However, at this moment, the Buddhist imprint was being burned by a 5-colored flame, which destroyed most of the imprint and offset most of the Buddhist power. The 5-colored flame was the form of the 5 flames that burned above the attic before, which meant that 5 people had entered the attic. The white-haired corpse took the opportunity to scratch the imprint and destroy it. That was the so-called calamity of corpses. Suyu was shocked. Why did the flames of the ancient dream altar eventually become the key to destroying the imprint and releasing the white-haired corpse? Just as Suyu was observing, the white-haired corpse opened his eyes. A pair of tyrannical, pitch-black eyes met Suyu's eyes. Suyu's soul suffered great damage in an instant. A gloomy death energy corroded a small part of Suyu's soul, and it quickly corroded the rest of his soul. Suyu was shocked, and he immediately absorbed the death energy that entered his body. Hurry up and leave. Suyu's heart trembled. An existence that could almost destroy his divine soul with one look was not at the level of an overlord. It was most likely a divine warrior of heaven and earth. Suyu grabbed the 2 women and instantly escaped from the 2nd level of the attic. Almost at the same time as he escaped, Suyu heard a loud bang behind him. The white-haired corpse had broken open the sarcophagus. Suyu's scalp went numb. Roar with a loud roar, boundless black corpse energy rushed out like a tsunami. The 2-story attic that had stood for countless years suddenly collapsed. Suyu turned his head and saw that both the upper and lower levels of the attic had been destroyed, revealing the giant stone statue in the 1st level of the attic. The stone statue emitted a strong Buddhist energy, resisting the corpse energy that had rushed out. However, the corpse energy was too strong, and the Buddhist energy weakened inch by inch until it was extinguished by the corpse energy. Boom! The stone statue was shrouded by the corpse energy and shattered with a rumble. The faceless stone statue of the Buddha was completely destroyed. However, from the stone statue, a golden alms bowl that was illuminated by the Buddhist light jumped out. It ignored the corpse energy and flew out along with the splashing debris. Is there something else in the stone statue? Suyu was slightly curious. Without thinking, he swept the golden alms bowl away with the power of space. Roar, as if sensing what Suyu had done, the white-haired corpse roared angrily from within the shocking corpse energy. Chapter 1705. At the same time, a giant palm formed by the power of desolation came crashing down from the ruins. An attack from a divine warrior of heaven and earth could destroy a divine warrior like a speck of dust. Suyu was not even a speck of dust. A huge sense of crisis loomed over him, and Suyu was alarmed. The most dangerous thing was not the tribulation fairy, but the white-haired corpse in the attic. Suyu grasped Xiaojingyu's hand tightly as he sensed that he was in a life-threatening crisis. He did not want to lose her again. Clenching his teeth, Suyu threw out a talisman without hesitation. The powerful power of desolation erupted from the talisman and gathered into a frosty palm print. It flew behind him and collided with the giant palm. The loud bang shook the entire central area. Suyu's feet shook violently, and the calm golden lake was overturned, splashing with endless Buddhist power. The roaring power surrounding Suyu was also dispersed by the collision of the 2 palms. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Suyu used the yin-yang wings of Supreme Pole and teleported away. Before leaving, Suyu noticed that the small altar formed by the 10 fragments of the altar was still floating above the golden lake. Coincidentally, Suyu grabbed it from afar and took it away. The yin and yang energies were in disorder, and Suyu appeared at the edge of the central area. But even at such a distance, Suyu could still feel the white-haired corpse's lock on him. The monstrous ferocity seemed to be right in front of him. The uneasy feeling of life and death still lingered in Su Yu's heart. But Su Yu was faced with a dilemma. There was no exit. The central area could only be entered, but not left. According to the usual practice, when the last person left the attic, the central area would automatically transport everyone to the outside world. But now the attic was destroyed, and Su Yu was trapped in the central area. The most terrifying thing was that the white-haired corpse of the divine warrior of heaven and earth, who had just woken up, was also trapped here. For the white-haired corpse, a radius of 100 million square meters was but a distance of a thought. It would be effortless for it to kill Su Yu. Su Yu teleported around the central area, his heart heavy. There was no exit. Roar! At this time, the white-haired corpse let out a shocking roar. Su Yu's eyebrows twitched. The danger was approaching. Su Yu used his heavenly eyes to take a look, and his expression changed drastically. The white-haired corpse had already rushed out of the ruins of the pavilion and stepped onto the golden lake. However, the lake was filled with pure Buddhist energy. The white-haired corpse stepped onto the golden lake and was immediately stopped by the Buddha force. When the golden Buddhist light shone on the white-haired corpse's body, it was as if it was on fire. Pitch-black smoke rose from the white-haired corpse's body, and the white-haired corpse let out pained and angry flames. Su Yu's eyes flashed. The Buddhist imprint and the golden lake of Buddhist power seemed to have been set up to seal this white-haired corpse. Where did it come from? Why did the faceless Buddha, a Taoist master of Buddhism, make such arrangements to suppress and seal the white-haired corpse before his death? However, this place had existed for too long, and the Buddhist energy in the golden lake was no longer what it used to be. Although the white-haired corpse was obstructed, it continued to move forward. The golden Buddhist light around the lake dimmed and gradually turned pitch-black. Black corpse chi rose from the lake. It was only a matter of time before the white-haired corpse stepped out of the golden lake. Most importantly, the white-haired corpse was staring in Su Yu's direction, completely locking onto him. Once he stepped out of the lake, Su Yu would die. He had to find a way to leave. Su Yu's eyebrows twitched even more violently. The ordeal that the tribulation fairy had left for him before he died was too tricky. It was comparable to the ordeal of life. Su Yu's mind was racing. How could he leave the central area? Could he commit suicide? Just like the others who had been eliminated, they had encountered danger and were automatically transported by the ancient dream altar. This idea was immediately rejected. He had tried to commit suicide once in the attic, but the ancient dream altar had not reacted. It seemed that after gathering the 10 fragments of the altar, the ancient dream altar had become strange. If this method did not work, how could he escape? Under the observation of the transparent eye, the white-haired corpse had already walked across more than half of the golden lake. The golden lake that used to be holy and radiant had become a gloomy, pitch-black lake that emitted corpse energy. Roar! With another roar, Su Yu's body shook violently, and he became slightly stiff again. No, he could not wait any longer. Su Yu's heart was pounding, and he held Xia Jingyu's hand tighter and tighter. He had finally reunited with her. How could he die here? Suddenly, a bright light flashed across Su Yu's mind. Ba Xiong had once told Su Yu that during his 3 years of deep sleep, he had often sensed ominous beings going in and out of the central area. However, 3 years ago, the ancient dream altar had never been opened, and it was isolated from the outside world. How did the ominous beings get in? How did they get out? Su Yu's eyes lit up with just a few words. There must be a secret path to the outside world in the central area. But where was that path? Where should Su Yu look for it now? Su Yu narrowed his eyes and pondered calmly. He had been to most of the central area, and there was only one place that was most suspicious. With a flash of light, Su Yu used the yin-yang wings of Supreme Pole again, and appeared in a ruin. This was the place where he had landed when he first came to the central area, and it was also the place where he encountered the yin-yang diagram of supreme pole. If there was a place that was most suspicious, it was undoubtedly this place. The dangers in the central area were mostly ferocious beasts, ancient formations, and so on. Only this yin-yang diagram of supreme pole seemed out of place. What bothered Su Yu the most was that when Su Yu saw the 10 fragments of the altar condense into a small altar, he felt a sense of déjà vu. At that time, Su Yu had no time to think about it, but now that he was calmly thinking about it, he was surprised to find that the small altar looked exactly the same as the pattern at the bottom of the cold pond under the yin-yang diagram of supreme pole. Su Yu took out the small altar from his chest and murmured, "I hope my speculation is correct." This was his only hope. Su Yu's heart thumped, and he immediately emitted a powerful yin and yang energy. The yin-yang diagram of supreme pole beneath his feet sensed the yin and yang energy, and 2 vortexes immediately appeared. "Let's go." Su Yu grabbed Xia Jingyu and Xing Gu and jumped in. Splash! Jumping into the cold pond, Su Yu immediately went to where the pattern was. After careful comparison, the pattern indeed looked like a small altar. After thinking about it, Su Yu placed the small altar on top of the pattern. The ordinary-looking pattern had actually transformed. The pattern rotated rapidly, sinking continuously, and a huge, pitch-black hole appeared. The cold water in the cold pond flowed down the hole. "It's here." Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that his speculation was correct. This place was indeed the hidden entrance to and from the ancient dream altar. Boom! However, at that moment, the yin-yang diagram of supreme pole suddenly rumbled. A giant palm covered in white hair came crashing down. It was the white-haired corpse. He had caught up. Just as Su Yu was about to escape, he caught up. The giant palm came crashing down. Before it landed, the tyrannical power had already caused everyone's bodies to stiffen, and they could not move. Were they going to die here? Su Yu looked at Xia Jingyu. She was looking at Su Yu deeply. Her eyes were as calm and peaceful as when they first met, clear and bright, pure and flawless. How peaceful were her eyes then? But ever since she met him, her eyes had been covered with worry and longing, replaced by sorrow, and occupied by pain and loneliness. That pair of tranquil eyes could no longer be seen. Xia Jingyu had once said that she liked being by Su Yu's side because he could give her peace of mind. But in the end, what had Su Yu given her? Apart from sadness, there was only pain. Staring at those eyes, Su Yu's heart trembled. He had given her nothing. Now, he could not even give her life. Deep shame, self-blame, and anger reverberated in his heart. Clenching his fists, Su Yu's eyes were resolute. "Fate, I cannot repeat the same mistakes." A fist-sized crystal ball slipped out of Su Yu's sleeve. Su Yu raised his head and swallowed the crystal ball. Bang, 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 all of a sudden Su Yu's body was like a thunderclap, and there was a series of violent sounds. A violent divine dragon power escaped from Su Yu's body through his pores. Su Yu's body, under the ravaging of the violent divine dragon power, was riddled with cracks. As the divine dragon power increased, the cracks on Su Yu's body became more and more concentrated. He was like a porcelain doll that was about to shatter. However, this was only his appearance. What was more serious was his soul. It was also full of cracks, and it would soon shatter. He had swallowed the entire dragon ball. Apart from the Dragon Emperor himself, or existences like the epoch-making dragon, who could bear the divine dragon power of an entire dragon ball, Su Yu could not. His body and his soul would be destroyed by the divine dragon power into ashes and disappear completely. There was no possibility of resurrection. Originally, he had planned to slowly refine it, but he had no chance. While his body was cracking, Su Yu used the incomparably violent divine dragon power to break through to the overlord level. To break through to the overlord level, the most important thing was to open up the inner mansion and store an immense amount of divine power. Opening up the inner mansion meant ascending to the level of an overlord. Ordinary people could not open up the inner mansion on their own. Geniuses like Empress Ziwei, Shui Guanyin, and the heartless Saber Emperor either relied on the elders of the divine warriors of heaven and earth to open up the inner mansion or relied on primordial spiritual items. Su Yu could only rely on the divine dragon power. The door of the inner mansion appear. Su Yu bellowed. A huge illusory stone door descended above Su Yu's head. That was the door of the inner mansion. As long as he could blast it open, he could become an overlord. Open! Su Yu roared, spewing out the raging divine dragon power from his mouth. It smashed into the door of the inner mansion and immediately caused a crack to appear. Open again! Su Yu's roar intensified, and an even more majestic divine dragon power rushed out, creating a 2-finger-wide crack in the door of the inner mansion. Because it was too violent, a layer of cracked shoulder blades peeled off, revealing the dark interior of his body. His body had already been completely destroyed by the power of the divine dragon, leaving only a thin layer of skin. Not enough! Su Yu bellowed. A mass of earth-shattering divine dragon power swept out like a tornado, breaking out of Su Yu's body. His chest, abdomen, and limbs were all shattered by the impact of the divine dragon power. However, the divine dragon power, which was 10 times stronger than before, was able to burst out and hit the stone door. Boom! Boom! The door of the inner mansion was like a wooden door, and it burst open with a loud bang. The door of the inner mansion was open. The divine power from all directions flowed into the door of the inner mansion like thousands of streams returning to the sea. The magnitude of the divine power was more than 10 times that of Su Yu at the moment. Drip! A drop of cold ice dripped from the ice coffin behind him, turning into hurried small words that lingered in front of Su Yu's eyes. Stop! Give up your body immediately and protect your soul. Your body and soul are about to be destroyed. The divine dragon power that was released was just the tip of the iceberg. Most of it remained in Su Yu's body, destroying his soul and body. The only way to survive was to give up his body and escape with his soul. Chapter 1706. Escape? If he escaped, who would give his Xia Jingyu a new life? Su Yu raised his hand and grabbed the door of the inner mansion. The inner mansion trembled slightly and turned into a mark, penetrating Su Yu's abdomen and entering his body, shattering the divine crystal and replacing it. 10 times the divine power of the past was surging. An unprecedented sense of power filled Su Yu's heart. Is this the realm of an overlord? Su Yu murmured. At this moment, in front of the Cave World Master, Su Yu felt the insignificance of the Cave World Master. About 1/10 of the power was enough to destroy the peak of the Cave World Master. In the past, he was able to defeat the strong and kill the overlords because of his many divine skills and treasures. Without these, Su Yu would be very powerless in the face of the overlords. Su Yu's lips curled into a tinge of regret as he sensed the power of an overlord and the exhilaration he felt. He finally had enough power, but unfortunately, he could not accompany Xia Jingyu anymore. Su Yu turned his head around and flashed a smile at Xia Jingyu. A green light flickered in Su Yu's palm, and a small golden dragon appeared in Su Yu's palm. The little dragon was carved with great concentration, and every trace was like a living thing. At first glance, Su Yu seemed to be holding a dragon. However, when he looked closely, he found that it was not a dragon, but a sword. The dragon's tail was the hilt. The dragon's body transformed into a sword. The dragon's head was the tip of the sword. The whole sword exuded a terrible dragon's power. The royal dragon sword. With a casual wave, it was a powerful treasure of the divine warrior level. Only the overlord level could wield it. Su Yu gripped the royal scepter dragon sword tightly and swept it horizontally with the huge white-haired palm. A heavy feeling came from his palm, and Su Yu felt like he was not holding a sword, but thousands of cavern worlds. The inner mansion seemed to have sensed it, and the divine power surged out like a tsunami. With the blessing of all the divine power, Su Yu finally managed to swing the sword. This sword was extremely slow. In the eyes of mortals, it was incomparably slow. It was like a child swinging a huge saber. In the eyes of high-level martial artists, the movement was as slow as a snail. Even the Cave World Senior could easily find the flaw in Su Yu's sword-wielding and kill him. However, when the sword moved, the horror of this sword was revealed. Wherever the longsword passed, there was actually nothing left. The emptiness of the absolute beginning world was the true emptiness. Even the Emperor of Heaven and Earth feared it. The enraged white-haired corpse sensed extreme danger and abruptly withdrew its huge white-haired palm. But Wang Quan's dragon sword was already swung out. The tip of the dragon-head sword touched the giant palm of the white-haired corpse. As a result, the sword actually split the giant palm in half. The void that was slashed apart fused into the wound on the giant palm of the white-haired corpse. Roar! After hearing the white-haired corpse's cry of terror, it quickly retracted its huge palm. He had repelled the divine warrior of heaven and earth with a single strike. This was the power of the royal dragon sword. Bang! However, even though Su Yu could swing his sword, he couldn't stop it. The powerful Dragon Clan's divine technique contained in the sword was madly extracting Su Yu's divine power. Su Yu, who had already exerted all of his strength, had emptied his inner mansion. There was no extra divine power left to supply the Royal Scepter Dragon Sword. However, the Royal Scepter Dragon Sword was extremely domineering. It couldn't extract anything from the inner mansion, so it extracted the essence from Su Yu's flesh and blood. His body, which was already full of cracks, withered rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he was like a bag of skin. Su Yu smiled bitterly. He didn't die in the Dragon Ball that was about to explode, but in the hands of the Royal Scepter Dragon Sword. This sword was too domineering. It wasn't something that he could control at his current level. However, it was still death. It was just a different way of dying. Su Yu turned around and barely managed to control the Royal Scepter Dragon Sword, slashing at the narrow dark tunnel. Bang! With a sweep of the sword, the dark tunnel was directly split open several feet wide. The ice water in the cold pool instantly flowed down. "Shenga, take her away," Su Yu said hoarsely. "Sir, I won't go. I'll go with you, even if I die." Shenga was one with the Buddha and Ghost, so she could sense the reincarnation of heaven and earth very clearly. Su Yu was about to die. It wasn't the kind of death that could defy the heavens and come back to life, but he would really disappear from the 6 realms. She didn't know when it started, but she had gotten used to the quiet life in the quiet valley. She had gotten used to waiting for Su Yu to appear, and she had gotten used to the indescribable sweetness. When she realized that something was wrong, she couldn't bear to leave Su Yu. She looked at Su Yu strangely and said, "I don't know why you would do this for me, but you must have your reasons. I want to know the answer." She stood there, not intending to leave. Su Yu didn't look back. A wisp of space energy flickered out of his palm and enveloped the 2 women. "Jing Yu, I never gave you the peace you wanted. I can only give you a chance to start over. Forget the past and start anew." Su Yu slowly closed his eyes. The space energy flickered, and the 2 women were teleported away. Su Yu's lips curled into a bitter smile. His heart felt empty. He looked up at the white-haired corpse again, his face full of murderous intent. If it hadn't appeared, Su Yu wouldn't have taken the risk to break through and use the Royal Scepter Dragon Sword that he couldn't control. Seeing that the Royal Scepter Dragon Sword was still moving, Su Yu broke through the ruins and leaped onto the yin-yang symbol of Tai Chi. He forcefully guided the Royal Scepter Dragon Sword and stabbed it towards the white-haired corpse. The white-haired corpse had just cut off its right arm to avoid the danger of the void crack. Seeing Su Yu's sword coming at it again, it roared in anger. Endless pitch-black corpse energy surged out of the corpse and turned into a pitch-black demonic palm that slammed into the Royal Scepter Dragon Sword. The sword mark broke through most of the corpse energy without any resistance. However, some of the corpse energy still lingered and headed straight for Su Yu. The strangest thing was that when the remaining corpse energy reached Su Yu, the white-haired corpse's hideous palm reached out and grabbed Su Yu's head like a thunderbolt. The attack was sudden and terrifying. How could Su Yu resist a direct attack from a divine warrior of heaven and earth? Especially when he couldn't retrieve the royal scepter dragon sword. Am I going to die? Su Yu's heart was surprisingly calm. Before he died, he had saved Xia Jingyu. His biggest regret had been fulfilled. Bang! However, at that moment, the ice coffin on Su Yu's back automatically left his back. Creak! The lid of the coffin moved a corner silently, and a flawless white arm stretched out from it. At that critical moment, it collided with the palm of the white-haired corpse. Thud, thud, thud! The white-haired corpse was knocked back by the palm and roared again and again. It was the female corpse. She had kept her promise and attacked Su Yu at the most critical moment. However, Su Yu was a little surprised that the female corpse could fight against the white-haired corpse alone. Roar! Roar! The white-haired corpse stared at the ice coffin and let out an unusually fierce roar. It was as if the ice coffin had angered him and provoked him into a frenzy. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and spoke in an ancient and cryptic language. The pitch-black lake was boiling violently. Masses of terrible corpse energy rushed out and corroded everything in its path. Everything, including the ruins of the attic, was corroded into dust. Su Yu could clearly hear that the white-haired corpse was speaking in the language of the ancient corpse clan. Endless Corpse Realm. That was the powerful divine technique of the ancient corpse clan. It could refine the whole world with its own corpse energy. Everything in the refined world would be reduced to corpse energy and become the power of the caster. Even if the divine warriors of heaven and earth were trapped in the endless corpse realm, they would not be able to escape. The frenzied corpse energy engulfed the ice coffin first. A delicate cry came from within the ice coffin, and it flickered continuously. However, once the endless corpse realm was used, there was no way to escape. In the blink of an eye, the ice coffin was engulfed by the corpse energy. Su Yu was forced to retreat to the front of the tunnel. With just a thought, he could escape through the tunnel. Looking at the ice coffin struggling in the corpse energy and sinking deeper and deeper, Su Yu hesitated for a moment. Then he stepped on the ground and rushed into the deadly energy with his sword. The corpse energy immediately rushed towards Su Yu, but it was repelled 1,000 feet away by the powerful dragon power of the royal dragon sword. However, as the corpse energy became thicker and thicker, the royal dragon sword was gradually approached by the corpse energy. Su Yu's expression was indifferent. With a leap, he came before the ice coffin and grasped it. Tick-tock! Why did you come back? The female corpse was very surprised. Su Yu looked up and laughed. His smile was exceptionally carefree. I have always repaid kindness in my life. How could I make an exception when I am about to die? After saying that, the royal dragon sword pointed at the ice coffin and used what little divine power he had left to sweep the ice coffin away from the corpse energy. It fell to the side of the tunnel. You go too. Su Yu turned his back to the ice coffin and waved his hand without looking back. The ice coffin stood where it was, as if there was a pair of eyes staring at Su Yu in disbelief. Tick-tock. Kid you, Su Yu laughed. Don't you call me lover anymore? It feels good to be called lover by a divine warrior of heaven and earth. Ah. Shaking his head, Su Yu said, Farewell, female corpse. Until now, he still did not know her name. He would never have the chance to find out. The corpse energy that had been slashed away surged back and surrounded the area again. Su Yu was trapped in the endless corpse realm, and all he could see was endless darkness. Staring at the royal dragon sword in his hand, which was being swung faster and faster, Su Yu's eyes were cold and indifferent. He looked through the dark corpse energy and saw a giant figure of white hair not far away, glaring at him angrily. Su Yu activated the divine dragon power in his body and poured it into the royal dragon sword. This was undoubtedly accelerating the explosion of the divine dragon power in his body, causing him to die earlier. However, to Suyu, it was just an earlier death. With the enormous divine dragon power, the royal dragon's sword trembled violently, and the sword let out a joyful dragon roar. The long sword shone brightly with golden light, and a series of cryptic dragon incantations surrounded the sword. At the same time, some kind of powerful sword technique was rapidly brewing. These were the three supreme divine arts of the dragon clan hidden in the sovereign dragon sword. It was left by the first dragon emperor, and it was the strongest three great divine techniques of the dragon clan. Now that he had obtained enough divine dragon power, he could activate one of them. In the darkness, the white-haired corpse looked terrified and fearful. With a roar, he pounced forward, trying to kill Suyu before the sword struck. Suyu felt that his body was on the brink of death, and his lips curled into a cold smile. "I'll use you to try the royal dragon sword." Roar. The dragon roar pierced through the heavens and the earth, resounding through the clouds, inside and outside the ancient dream altar, and spread throughout the entire sea of constellations. After the earth-shattering dragon roar, the sky was filled with chains of the laws of heaven and earth. Looking up, the sky above the sea of constellations was filled with chains of the laws of heaven and earth. Chapter 1707. Such a terrifying vision of heaven and earth caused the expressions of the Star Pavilion's woman and the Snow Dragon Divine Warrior to change. "Get away from the ancient dream altar immediately, now, quickly!" The Snow Dragon Divine Warrior was shocked and immediately ordered. The woman also did not hesitate. With a wave of her sleeves, she took all the members of the Star Pavilion and fled hundreds of millions of miles away. Almost at the moment when they were ready, a horrifying scene happened. A huge sword chi that looked like a real dragon rushed out from within the ancient dream altar. It split the entire ancient dream altar into two and forcefully broke it. Roar. Vaguely, everyone heard some kind of gloomy roar. Then, the huge sword energy fell on the Xue nation of the Northern Territory. Boom! The entire constellation sea trembled violently, as if the sky and earth had been turned upside down. A crack that was millions of miles wide and 1,000,000,000,000 miles long ran through the entire Xue nation of the Northern Territory. From the Snow Dragon Divine Warrior's palace, it spread all the way to the territory of the South Sea Killing Emperor. The shocking scene was unforgettable for all who witnessed it. Even someone as strong as the woman had a look of horror on her face. The Dragon Clan's supreme divine technique? How is this possible? The Snow Dragon Divine Warrior's expression was extremely grave. He stared at the ruins of the ancient dream altar, his eyes flashing with deep worry. The whole place was silent. They were all shocked by the terrifying sword chi. Even the divine warriors of heaven and earth would not be spared from that sword. After a long time, the smoke and dust dissipated. The woman and the Snow Dragon Divine Warrior went to inquire about the details. In the ruins, Suyu stood in the same place. The royal dragon sword in his hand had stopped working because it had been completely swung out. The white-haired corpse was nowhere to be seen and his breath was gone. It was unknown whether he was dead or had escaped. But Suyu was already an arrow at the end of its flight and his breath was weak. Only the immortal heart was still beating, barely keeping his body from being destroyed. But the divine dragon power in his body had not stopped erupting. Or rather, the eruption had just begun. What had just been released was only a billionth of the divine dragon power of the Dragon Pearl. The rest was the most fatal. Suyu slowly closed his eyes and quietly waited for his final death. Bang! Bang! The divine dragon power erupted. Once it appeared, it immediately destroyed Suyu's body and destroyed Suyu's shattered soul. In front of it, Suyu was like a speck of dust in front of a torrent. In the next breath, he would be completely submerged. Jingyu, Xian, Suyu murmured as he recalled their voices and smiles for the last time in his mind. With a smile on his face, he welcomed his final death. DD, however, at this moment, a strange scene appeared. A pink mist gushed out from the 9 jade spiritual pearl. That was the little Qilint's unique pink mist. Is it awake? According to Su Yu's estimations, it would take at least half a year to a year for it to wake up. So, why would it wake up now? Upon closer inspection, there was only the pink mist. The little Qilin had yet to appear. However, a silver ball was wrapped in the pink mist, and it was brought out of the 9 jade spiritual pearl by the pink mist. The heavenly orchid silver bamboo's fruit? Su Yu was slightly surprised. What was even more surprising was that the fruit, which had been quiet all this while and whose function was unknown, had now sensed the immense power of the divine dragon. It flew over on its own and landed on Su Yu's abdomen. Su Yu dodged it subconsciously. He did not forget that the fruit contained a strong thunderbolt power. However, in Su Yu's current condition, he could only watch helplessly as the silver fruit stuck to his abdomen. The next moment, something that shocked Su Yu to the core happened. The divine dragon power that was surging and erupting in his body, like thousands of streams returning to the sea, frantically rushed towards the silver fruit. The silver fruit was like a bottomless pit, easily containing the endless divine dragon power. In just a few breaths, the divine dragon power of the entire dragon pearl was completely absorbed by the silver fruit, leaving not a trace behind. Su Yu was shocked. What was the fruit borne by the heavenly orchid silver bamboo? How could it be so terrifying? However, Su Yu knew that he had passed through the gates of hell. Without the eruption of the primordial power, Su Yu's immortal heart beat rapidly, causing Su Yu's wounded body to slowly recover. A feeling of surviving a disaster rippled in Su Yu's heart. What is the silver fruit? How did the little Qilin know its function and send it out at a critical moment? Su Yu was extremely curious. However, now was not the time to be curious. Sensing the aura of the 2 divine warriors of heaven and earth approaching cautiously, Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. If anyone knew that the earth-shattering sword just now came from him, it would be a fatal disaster. Moving his body with great difficulty, Su Yu leaped into the tunnel. The icy sensation spread all over his body, and Su Yu felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Splash! Until he heard the sound of falling into water, Su Yu looked around and was surprised to find that he had appeared in an ice cave. There was black ice everywhere. Within the black ice there were ice coffins erected, and in each ice coffin there was a sleeping creature. When his gaze swept past 2 of the ice coffins, Su Yu was shocked. Bai Hua Fairy Lu Tianji? Su Yu was shocked. Bai Hua Fairy, Lu Tianji, and Li Yu were all tricked into the Northern Territory Shui Nation and into that inn. Bai Hua Fairy was the first to disappear, followed by Li Yu, and Lu Tianji was rescued by Su Yu. Why was Lu Tianji here? And with the missing Bai Hua Fairy? The strangest thing was that they were sealed in the ice coffins. Su Yu had recovered a part of his divine power, so he walked forward and moved the ice coffins away. Unlike the ice coffins of the female corpse, their ice coffins were very ordinary and could be easily moved. The moment they were moved, Bai Hua Fairy and Lu Tianji opened their eyes at the same time. But their eyes were bloodshot. Their mouths were also full of sharp fangs, and without warning, they bit at Su Yu's neck. Su Yu reacted quickly, taking a step back, and at the same time using the space technique to seal the 2. Even so, the 2 of them still let out a low growl, struggling to pounce on Su Yu. Su Yu's eyes were filled with curiosity. How did they become like this? This place was full of strangeness, and Su Yu did not dare to stay any longer. He kept the 2 of them and looked for an exit. Not long after, he came to another pool. This pool was not on the ground, but on top of the black ice. Su Yu stood on the ground and looked up to see the bottom of the pool. A feeling of familiarity surged into Su Yu's heart. After thinking for a while, Su Yu jumped into the pool. Suddenly, a shocking chill hit him, and Su Yu used the divine power of an overlord to barely support himself and quickly swam up. When he jumped out of the water and looked around, Su Yu's pupils constricted. How could it be here? This place was the hidden underground frigid ice pool in the inn. It was also here that Su Yu saved Li Yu and was entangled by the ice coffin of the female corpse. Su Yu had never thought that the hidden exit of the ancient dream altar would lead directly to this place. What was the relationship between the female corpse and the ancient dream altar? Why did this place lead directly to the ancient dream altar? Ba Xiong said that there were often strange creatures coming and going to the ancient dream altar in the past 3 years. Could it be the female corpse? Who was she? What was this place? All kinds of questions lingered in Su Yu's heart. However, this was not the place to explore. He immediately returned to the inn through the hidden space, and from the inn, he successfully escaped all the way to the imperial city of the Snow Dragon Divine Warrior. What he did not know was, in the underground space of black ice, a piece of black ice melted, and an ice coffin appeared. An unusually beautiful woman lay inside. The ice coffin stood upright, quietly facing the direction where Su Yu had left, as if in deep thought. Queen! A young man with a deathly aura knelt respectfully in front of the ice coffin. That brat has discovered our secret. Why did the queen let him go? With his injuries, this subordinate can also easily kill him. A clear voice came from the ice coffin. Do I need to explain my actions to you? The young man hurriedly said, I dare not. I am just worried that he will expose us and ruin the great plan of the ancient corpse sect. The ice coffin said indifferently, the seal of the faceless Buddha has been broken, and our great plan has succeeded. There is no need for him to expose himself. The group of martial artists in the Sea of Constellations should have realized that we had secretly planned this. The young man was still not satisfied, or rather jealous. The queen had never been a soft-hearted person. Or rather, she was a decisive, cold-blooded, and merciless person. He had never seen the queen show mercy to an outsider. In particular, the queen's original plan was to seal this person in the ice coffin, just like the group of people who had been tricked. However, the queen had changed her mind. The young man could keenly feel that the queen's attitude towards him was a little unusual. This made the young man extremely jealous. Pass down my order. Retreat immediately and enter the ancient star, the ice coffin said. It paused for a moment, then said faintly, Take the 2 women with you. Remember, do not hurt them for the time being. The young man was puzzled. The 2 women had fallen into the lair of the ancient corpse sect. How could they not be subdued? Why was the queen so merciful to them? At that moment, he heard a light snort from within the ice coffin. I do not like to share things with others, especially men. In the imperial city, Su Yu was recovering from his injuries in a secret corner. He then hurried to the palace of the Snow Dragon Divine Warrior. For some reason, the underground space of ice where the ice coffin was displayed made Su Yu feel deeply uneasy. It was necessary to inform Mu Songhai about this. He hoped that he could pass the message to the Star Pavilion through her. Arriving at the dazzling Crystal Palace, Su Yu entered with ease and headed straight for the peak where the Star Pavilion was located. However, there was no one at the peak. Is he still in the palace? Su Yu frowned slightly. He had intended to leave the northern Shui nation. He had become one of the 5 spirit kings of the ancient dream altar, and was the only person who had entered the 2nd level of the pavilion since ancient times. It was rumored that the Path Master Saraira was on the 2nd level. If he showed up, he would definitely become the center of attention. If that happened, it would not be easy to leave the northern Shui nation. After a moment of contemplation, Su Yu left behind a jade slip, recording in detail what he had seen in the underground dazzling Crystal Palace. With the great power of the Star Pavilion, they should be able to find out the hidden dangers. After doing this, Su Yu left the peak. I wonder where Xia Jingyu and Shenga are. They escaped first. If everything went well, they should be in the Imperial City. Su Yu released his heavenly eyes and prepared to secretly search for them. Suddenly, a delicate voice fell into his ears. Su Yu, aren't you in the ancient dream altar? Why are you here? Su Yu turned his head to look, and his scalp went numb. I'm asking you a question. The woman's temperament was as cold as ever. A pair of eyes covered in frost stared at Su Yu. Su Yu felt a headache coming on. He was about to meet the person he did not want to meet the most. Oh, it's Empress Ziwei. What a coincidence. Su Yu said, embarrassed. His mind was racing, trying to figure out how to escape. The woman's eyes were unfriendly. She seemed to be brooding over Su Yu's scheme to get her eliminated. She did not intend to let him off easily.